I wasn't out, but I did talk to
We've got a full day today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Look, everybody's had a chance to kind of look at the agenda, but we're going to start off again just kind of going over the next component of the strategic plan, which is prospecting corporate, foundation, and individual donors. And then we'll get into the individual fundraising skills, talking about the approach, and then how to ask good questions. And then we have the privilege today to have a pretty awesome panel discussion. So we have 3 good folks from the industry coming in to share their experiences with you guys, and so that hopefully we can have a good dialogue and conversation with them from the philanthropist point of view and the foundation point of view. And then we'll finish up, if we have some time, just the last part of the questions and approach section of the cause selling part of the personal fundraising skills. Sound good? All right, here we go. Pull up our wonderful spreadsheets. All right, is this the one you want up, or do you want the other ones up first?
Let's start this one.
Okay. Okay. So what we built what we talked about last time was the long-term forecasting. So, figuring out based on your needs, what your revenues needed to be, and then projecting that out within your revenue distributions for the 3 to 5 plus years. And so this week, the part of the strategic plan is prospecting the corporations, the individual donors, and the corporate donors, the specific ones that you can reach out within your sphere of influence, and those that match what you've decided and landed on your revenue distribution mix there. Like if you wanted to increase your individual contributions next year by $12,000, then who specifically are you going to reach out to for those funds? Same with corporate and same with foundation. Does that make sense? Okay. And so in order to help you figure out, like, who do I put on this list, what makes sense to put on this list, we've developed similar to your, the PAT score sheet that Sal had developed before to determine how to prioritize some of your tasks. We did the same thing for prioritizing your donor and individual donor lists.
So go back to that spreadsheet that we were on.
Yeah.
So on this spreadsheet, we have it so that when you enter these numbers, it automatically sums. Because this spreadsheet was getting a little bit unmanageable, we didn't have columns to add across the 4 different types of donations. But feel free to modify this spreadsheet for yourselves.
Yeah.
And again, what we're trying to do is show you a very well integrated process. When you talk about needs and stuff like that, right? I mean, we're talking about building a budget and understanding what revenue needs to be increased. And in order to do that, all these spreadsheets are linked to the first part of the. If you look back to the first section that we had about the revenue structure, the revenue diversity, all that stuff, to the next lecture, and then last week's lecture about financial planning, we developed this so that you have a nice integrated way of doing this. The thing that, and I was talking to Larry about this earlier today, a lot of this stuff is not well integrated within organizations. And so it becomes very difficult to manage the resources, but also manage how you're going to go, having a strategy and how you're going to do the prospecting for different types of donations. And so we're trying to have a very holistic approach to doing this. And we were talking to Larry, and when Megan and I talked to the organizations, one of the difficulties is for the young organizations is to actually think of how it is that they want to grow. right? And you know, generally it's like, well, we'll create a foundation. Well, you create a foundation, but you also have to think of how you're going to keep those lights on, because it's not just from 1 year to 1 year to 1 year. It's actually for perpetuity. And so as you go on and as you grow, the need for revenue increases. And again, we're talking, you know, Keith was talking about the Jewish Federation, how some donors are no longer giving what they used to give, some give less. Well, then how are you going to replace that? And so when you do this, Megan created these short-term, mid-term, and long-term columns, right? Those numbers there you can change, you can do whatever you want with them. But ultimately, what you have to do is find the revenue that you're going to need in order to sustain that organization, but also meet all of its needs. And that takes a lot of work. It takes understanding how you're going to do it, what tactics are you going to have, what strategies are you going to have. Because again, Lauren's not here. With her organization that's been around for a while, eventually those revenue sources start to plateau, right? Sort of like, you know, I do a lot of exercise, and we get to that point where you plateau, then how are you going to break that plateau? But it's similar with these donations. They plateau, then becomes how are you going to increase that? Right, with current donors, with new donors, new corporations, new foundations. Right, foundations are getting more strict on what they want. Right, so the onus on you becomes a lot greater. So then you have to understand how are you going to tell your story in order to cultivate new donors with additional funding and everything else. Right, that's the hard part. I mean, us telling you how to do. I mean, all of you guys know how to do this, and we're just sort of adding things to it. But ultimately, it's your decision on how you're going to approach these individuals and corporations, right? So now if we go to the...
And just real quick, the numbers that are here directly coincide with what your revenue, what you've decided and landed on at the top for your revenue distribution. So, you know, the formulas are all in there too, but again, as Sal said, you can format this however that makes sense for your organization. You know, when we put things in black and white, then, you know, it's easier to have that goal and you actually stick to a plan. So when you put names and you know exactly what your ask is and what your goals are for these specific individuals and foundations.
Okay, so this spreadsheet, as Megan said, we created the program activity task score sheet, that task score sheet for programs on how you prioritize. And so what we did jointly was develop a way to score and prioritize both corporate and individual donors. And again, goes back to some of the discussion that Jeanette had about grants and that sort of stuff. But we're applying this to corporate donors and also individuals. And so one of the things that Jeanette mentioned was that sometimes there's lip service from organizations about doing social responsibility. This is the true story. Amazon built a brand new distribution center in the place that I grew up in California, in Fresno. I was only there for a couple of years, from about 5 to about 18, then I moved out. But Amazon built this brand new distribution center, and they have tax abatements because they went there. And during the time that Bezos was divorcing his wife of 20 plus years to help him build Amazon. So he's going through divorce. They get divorced. He gets out, I don't know how many billions of dollars to buy a yacht and all kinds of stuff. And there's a story in the Fresno newspaper of how Amazon gave this wonderful donation to the Fresno School District. That donation turned out to be $10,000.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
$10,000. The wealthiest man in the world, this humongous organization, gets divorced, gives his ex-wife $30-something billion, spends $100-something on a yacht, and the guy gives $10,000 to his school district. Right? I told Steve, I said, what kind, I not agree with social responsibility. Right? So this column here is social responsibility. Because you have to find those organizations that really have that interest in helping you out. Not just the lip service. When I'm doing my doctor work in Pittsburgh was known for doing a lot of redlining. Redlining is when banks and other institutions decide to have lines where they don't go beyond, where they don't invest in certain areas because of demographics. And so when I was doing my work in Pittsburgh, one of my persons on my committee was a former deputy mayor for one of the mayors, and so he was telling me about the redlining and that sort of stuff, about some of the banks like PNC and some other ones would invest but not invest in certain communities. Okay? And so their idea of social responsibility was to invest in those areas that they knew their money was going to go a lot further as opposed to areas that really needed it. And again, this goes to social responsibility. So when you're looking at corporations, look at them in terms of what is it that they're going to contribute to, not just your organization, but contribute to your community, because that's going to be very important. If they're not going to have that responsibility of actually donating and being part of your organization, I mean, you may want to cultivate them, but you got to realize that that responsibility is not what, not the ideal level of involvement that you may want. But again, you have to target them, realizing that they're involved to the extent that they're going to be involved in, but you try to sway them to be real active participants in your organization and in your community. Right? So we scored this from 5 to 1. Again, we're hoping that when you look at corporations, that you look at them very thoroughly, look at how well they're going to be involved in your community, how well they're going to respond to your cause, which is the second one, right? Supports cause or mission. Right? How engaged are they in responding to your needs? Right? With everything that you have, you present your organization. You tell them how well you do your job, how successful you are in providing the services to your clients. Then the question is, are they going to support you in your mission? And is it going to be high or low? But you try to get those individuals that are going to be moderate to high. Right? You can, again, target those that are going to be low, but you got to realize that it's going to take a lot of work for you to cultivate that group. And you may get them, but then comes the second part, right? The third part, did they actually contribute previously to similar organizations as yours, or did they contribute to the community in general? Again, going back to when I was working in Pittsburgh, doing my graduate work and my doctorate work, Mo Coleman was the person that was former deputy mayor. He was so instrumental for my dissertation because he actually told me the history of philanthropy in Pittsburgh. How some organizations, they said, they would be philanthropists, but they'd be philanthropists only to the extent that it helped their image in certain communities. Knowing that there was these communities in Pittsburgh, like in the Hill District. You guys remember History Blues, the police show back in the...
Yeah.
Right? Well, part of that was based on in the Hill District. In the Hill District in Pittsburgh is predominantly black, it's all black. And in Pittsburgh, what they also did was that most banks did not invest in that area. They also, if you look at Pittsburgh, they have where the Penguins play. I think it's called Mellon Arena now. That was actually built as a buffer between the city, and so that people wouldn't go into the Hill District. Right. And so, a lot of the banks and that sort of stuff, they contributed to Pittsburgh, but they would only contribute to downtown, to the symphony, to the ballet, to all the arts, right? And they would exclude certain areas. So when you look at these corporations, when you talk about previous contributions, it's previous contributions to organizations like yours. How willing are they going to give to organizations like yours, right? When you start compared to the Philharmonics, to the ballets and that sort of thing, right? Most organizations, most corporations like to give to the arts. How many of them actually give to your type of organizations? Organizations that really help out individuals, right? Like Happy.
How do you find out? How do you find out? So I go, let's just say, I look at Auto Nation downtown Fort Worth. I find out what they're giving patterns.
Well, they're going to put some of their information in their corporate social responsibility. I mean, they're going to advertise because that's why they're doing it. So I think if you want to look in some of their
Website.
annual reports, and they'll have a section there that talks about their corporate social responsibility, but also the networking. When you're at events and you see who are the sponsors, you know, that kind of thing, make a mental note. When, especially if you're at an event, it's going to be an event that's comparable or comparable to what your organization. So I would see who's involved in those kinds of things.
One other question. I've been told we're better off going after really into smaller local organizations rather than major nationals. Is that reasonable?
Yes, and I was talking to Christy and Eduardo and some of the other young nonprofits. Yeah, here's the thing about going for those, in my experience, going for the large corporations, remember, they're getting hit constantly, right? If you start looking locally and where you're located, right, your area, right, look at all the little small businesses that you can tap into. That don't know, that may not take advantage, well, I don't want to say take advantage, but understand their contributions to a nonprofit, what actually means for them reducing their tax liability. Right? There's all these small little organizations, businesses, private businesses, small corporations around your area that you can go ahead and talk to. When I was back in doing my graduate work, there was a number of nonprofits that were involved, that were located close to the University of Pittsburgh. And I would go, and I working on my graduate work and stuff, I would go and visit some of these nonprofits, and they would have these plaques of different businesses in that area that contributed. They were like gold members, some of them silver members, and then I would visit some of those establishments to buy food and that sort of stuff, because I was a graduate student, and they would proudly display their contributions to a particular nonprofit. They would have them, board member who donated $5,000, $10,000, whatever. How many, when you walk around your neighborhood, how many of those businesses have those types of facts? Right? So rather than trying to hit the big corporations, you have your little network in your place. How many of you actually go around and try to cultivate those corporations around your area?
And they're trying to survive as mom and pops too. So they've already, drank the local Kool-Aid, so to speak. So, you're all trying to help each other.
I just wanted to say, Larry, I've always found great resources on GuideStar because, that's, one of the transparent vehicles that we can check into. And so if you look at who they fund, who those organizations are funding, and if you're in a like organization, you can also go to that website of who they fund and find out, what mission alignments are, use some of that same language and such. But I totally agree with that. And I've always, because I'm such a linear thinker, I think, like for you, what company wants to get in front of those that you serve? And to me, one of the naturals is like insurance, life insurance, disabilities insurance and such like that. And so go to them because that's the audience they want to tap into. So that becomes your, kind of like your asset to share with them. So,
The win-win.
Yeah.
the win-win, yes.
So look at their previous contributions because you have to score them, right? The likelihood that they're going to contribute to yours. Then there's the next column, which is funding potential, and that's based on their annual income, the revenue. The thing about multi-billion-dollar corporations is that yes, they have a lot of money, but they're also constantly being hit, right? And so the probability of them giving another new nonprofit something is pretty small. The thing is, then you start going to the smaller corporations. Then you actually have to start thinking about what is their funding potential. Right? Because their contribution gets capped after a while, just like individuals. Right? Based on my annual income, I give X amount percent, and once I tap that percent, after that, it's like there's no benefit for me other than me get involved and continue to donate. So there's the funding potential.
And just real quick, all of these things can be tailored to your demographic. Like when you're mining your data and you're like, okay, 60% of our sponsorships or corporate sponsorships and engagement looks like this from this kind of organization, then you would identify different variables here to measure.
Yes. And then, then the next column is overall match. That's just an average of the different scores. And I did that on purpose because it's kind of hard to gauge what the overall match is. So what I did was I just averaged the ones for that to give a sort of an average rating across those social responsibility, supports the cause, previous foundation, and then the funding potential. And then comes the total score at the end. Two things about the total score. If you score a corporation high, then you know that they're not most likely going to contribute to you. That's sort of the easy part. The hard part is like these numbers when you start getting low here, because then that's a corporation that has the potential to give to you. The question then becomes, how are you going to cultivate that corporation to provide funding for you? And there's a strategy for doing that. The thing is, as a strategy, what is the best way for you to get that person, that corporation? That's the hard part. That's where you have to be very strategic about how it is you approach them. We mentioned earlier about most of the nonprofits do not have very good performance measures on how they measure success of their services. When we were talking to Sandra Einhorn, she was talking about Big Brothers Big Sisters. They do great with the number of percentage of kids graduating. Right? The Jewish Federation does good about the number of people that they give to. Right? There's some organizations that have these key performance indicators, KPIs, that actually tell the story of how well they're doing. If your organization doesn't have that, it becomes something that you have to overcome, because you have to tell this corporation that's on the border that they should contribute to you. How are you going to convince that organization to contribute to you and not contribute to me? Because if I'm Sal Guajardo with the nonprofit, guess what I've already done? I've done everything that we're doing here. I've done that for my nonprofit from the beginning. The mission, the program assessment, the key performance indicators, me telling my story on how well my programs serve my client. So if I have someone on the border here, they're going to look at what? They're going to look at my financial stability. They're going to look at issues, liquidity ratios that I'm going to provide for them. They're going to write in the net profit margin. Then all the stuff that comes associated with all those programs. And I'm going to tell them what? For the amount of money that you're giving me, this is what I'm going to get. As opposed to what? Another nonprofit that doesn't have that. How are they going to overcome that? And what strategies are they going to use to convince this corporation that has the potential to help you to actually help you? Because that's part of the fundraising. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give an example of that? Because sometimes what they want, you're not able to give. If they want to get a certain number of referrals because they supported something that you're doing, you can't promise that. So
No.
Can you give an example of something that you could identify for someone who scores low, that you would be able to give them and how they would benefit by supporting you?
Well, universities do that all the time, like this one here. You have there's going to be a couple of individuals, one individual in particular that's going to be on the panel. That person contributes to this university. For universities, when you're competing for corporations and corporate sponsorship, you have to go through that process of why should I give to NSU as opposed to University of Miami? Why should I give to NSU compared to University of South Florida State? Right? So what I'm saying is about the nonprofits, they have to take a similar approach. What is it that you're doing that's going to convince someone like Joe Farrell or someone like Susan, who's going to come from Hard Rock Cafe, that they're going to contribute to your organization as opposed to Big Brothers Big Sisters? Because you have to convince them that what you're providing is what? A service that's going to have a return on their money, but not only that, those individuals that you're helping are going to be better off because they contributed to you as opposed to someone else.
And it's going to be different, and that's part of the reading the individual that's responsible, or that's going to be the person that's writing the check. What are they passionate about? Maybe like for using the university as an example, maybe they want to mentor. Maybe they are dying to find a way to give back to the community or to the students, and us just providing that sort of connection to get them in a mentorship role, that's enough. So it's just gonna vary depending on who you're talking to, and maybe they just want exposure. To your point, exposure to your service audience.
Yeah. So let me give you a very concrete example. My ex-wife, one of them, Patty worked for the Cancer Research Foundation in Evanston, Illinois. And they also provide services to young kids. And in this one particular case, there was a young, beautiful young girl who ended up with leukemia. And her father happened to be not only a philanthropist, but he also created his own company. And it was a company that produced shampoo and high-end cosmetic products. I'm not going to tell them what company. And so what the executive director did, she found out that his daughter had leukemia. Didn't know if she was going to survive or not. So she went and talked to this gentleman. And so she took the team with her, provided tons of information on all the cancer projects that this foundation was providing money to, dealing with all kinds of high-level doctors and all kinds of things, and things that foundation was actually sponsoring in terms of research, the number of individuals that were served, the number of individuals that had their cancer in remission, all that stuff. She went and talked to this individual, knowing that his daughter may not have survived because of leukemia. So what this gentleman did, he gave millions of dollars to the Cancer Research Foundation personally, but then his corporation actually became a sponsor of that Cancer Research Foundation. So every time there was a gala, everything like that, his name, the company was predominantly displayed. A lot of the proceeds from a lot of the revenue that the company was generating, part of that went to the Cancer Research Foundation, and because they tied that to his daughter and what it meant to him, but also what it meant to the community and other kids like her. Plus, he also gave some of his personal wealth to that organization. So there, again, and this was his first time getting involved in these activities because it was a new corporation. So, but he already established this thing about social responsibility for the corporation. How are they going to give? Right? It's his first time he was supporting the cause because the executive director went and talked to him personally about what the Cancer Research Foundation does, what it does for kids with cancer. And so he became very what? He became very emotionally involved. We were talking about earlier about desire and emotion, right? He became emotionally involved because of his daughter, but also because of what the Cancer Research Foundation was going to do in terms of sponsoring projects, in terms of giving money to individuals who are in need and all this other stuff, right? Everything that you want in order to what? Convince a person that they need to get involved. You guys, just ma'am.
Oh, no. So my question is, what if the corporation has a particular set of values, but the individual who's responsible for allocating those funds has something that's completely different and their own agenda?
No.
They're kind of well, I think it's been your experience that that person's dictating where the money goes.
Right, so then do you play to their personal interests?
Yes.
I mean, but it still doesn't really support the overall good of the corporation.
How do you honor the corporation?
So
It's not your job to honor their corporation. That's their job. And if that's, if that's not what their priority is, then you just have to learn where you're getting.
Go ahead.
The other part that I would say to that is if it is exactly the way you explained it or described it, my question would be, should an organization really want to do business with that company, or is it just for the money? Because if the company is saying that this is one set of values and this is what we support, yet the leader of that organization has a whole different agenda, I guess...
Not necessarily the leadership, but the person in charge of making...
Well, I'm still saying the leader.
I think it's tough because, you can, for example, there's a lot of oil and gas companies that have a lot of money, and they might not be doing things that are aligned with your organization.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So, but your organization has to determine where you want to get to. Exactly.
Yeah. So on this next spreadsheet, we did one for individual donors because everything that applies to the corporation applies to individuals. Right? And so it goes to your question now. Do you want this individual or do you want the corporation involved? And again, that's a decision. There was a lecture that Megan, no, I shouldn't say lecture, a talk that Megan presented about the ethics. Right? And you're talking about ethics, you're talking about being ethical. There are, like as I mentioned earlier, there are corporations that give a lot of lip service to social responsibility. Right? You know some of them. But similarly, there are a lot of individuals who have the same thing. that claim they're going to be socially responsible, but they're not, right? So you have this disconnect between the individual and the corporation, or the individual and the organization. Organizations are going to give because there's an incentive for them to give. It's their prestige, it's their branding, it's their tax write-off that they're going to get, right? So they may not necessarily be totally percent on supporting your mission, but they're going to give because of the monetary
Because they need to
implications.
give.
Yeah,
Because they need to watch out for things, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And so, again, what I'm hearing is that if they also see that you have a target audience that they want to be a part of and get in front of, where they have not had that success, and they see that's their inroads, then maybe that's successful. I'm thinking of, like, for example, the Coleman Foundation, the Susan Coleman Foundation. She and herself and their family was very much into the dealing with cancer for women. And if it wasn't for the fact that you had a whole Buckeye Nation that, because of her husband's affiliation with the actual university and his position with the football team, therefore there was an alignment that they would have never had that even surpassed the actual cancer walk and cancer awarenesses that they've been doing before. So sometimes, yes, everything may not always come to green, but if you have a target audience that they really want to get in front of, then
And we'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Where do they want to go? Where do they want to show up?
All right, Chair, let me give.
And
let
that's
me-
part of
yeah.
the relationship building and the connection between, development officers and the community, whether it be corporate or individuals.
Yeah, let me, this personal. I, as you know, I graduated from, I graduated from UCLA. Then I went to University of Pittsburgh. I do not give, as an alumni, I do not give to UCLA and I don't give to Pittsburgh. I don't. One, because they don't need my money. But I'm more involved, for example, and you hear me, because I'm involved with both Thai kids. Right? I want to be involved with other organizations that provide services to kids based on my personal experience as a kid, but also things that I've seen and things that that's more in line with my philosophy and my view of what it is to be a philanthropist and what it means to be socially involved. And so those are the organizations that I'm going to be attracted to, just naturally. Right? I'm not going to give to an organization that has nothing to do with what I believe in, even if they come to me and tell me, here's all of this, because that's not where my heart is. And also, I know that if I contribute to a young organization like Happy, a young organization like On My Own, the resources that I give them are going to go a lot further than if I give to somebody else.
Right.
Right? And so when you talk about individuals, again, you have to, the nonprofit world is very small. You know who sits on the board, you know who they are, right? You know who participates in the nonprofit breakfast at the chamber, right? You know who belongs to the chamber, you know who belongs to Senator Einhorn's, the Nonprofit Executive Alliance. You guys know all of this stuff. You guys know individuals in it, right? You know individuals that are involved with the Urban League and so forth, right? Same thing with the Jewish Federation. You know all of that information helps you to do what? Look at those individuals. Are they likely to help you? How are they going to likely to help you? Are they going to support you or not? And to what extent? Right? If you're trying to cultivate new donors, whom are you going to talk to? Talk to people on the board to see if they know what? Individuals who want to get involved but aren't involved.
And that
And
might
you
be an
cultivate them.
extra variable here that you add to it if you find, obviously we know that connections breed results. So if, maybe it's important and you're going to wait, if there's some sort of connection to the board or connection to an event or something that you have that you're doing and that places value and helps you prioritize who you're going to reach out to first.
Yeah, and so we're going to have 3 panelists coming up in an hour or two. And ask them questions about why is it that they contribute? How do they get involved? There's one young gentleman who's 20 years younger than I am. It's John. The man started his own nonprofit in his 20s when he was going to Beirut. He started that with nothing. Helped him get paid through his education and everything else. Now he's the executive director of You Visit Foundation. The guy's 36 years old. Puts me to shame. Right? But it's individuals like him that are going to what? That are going to help you out. Right? It's individuals like Joe Farrell, who created the Resolve Marine Group, multi-billionaire, right, who created, Amanda's not here because she's at a wedding, not her wedding, somebody else's wedding. Amanda, who's campaign director of communications for Mission Resolve, the foundation that Joe Farrell created. Right? So he's given to that organization, but also, I mean, you know, Nicholas is in here. Nicholas is for marine education. Right? If he's not talking to John Carroll, because John Carroll's company deals with marine issues and stuff like that, if Nicholas, who's not here, isn't talking to him, you're losing what? You're losing a potential, not just a corporation, but an individual that may what? May contribute to that education fund, to the marine education foundation.
Building a relationship.
Right? You have to build those relationships. For individuals, you got to find out who they are, why they give, where are they, and what is the potential for them to donate resources to your organization. Right? I mean, in-kind contributions are fine, right? But ultimately, they don't bring what? They don't bring cash. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I think the challenge is, at least for me, when you have somebody who meets all of these, and everything on paper is a high score, and it makes sense, and they do like you, but they may not love you as much as they love someone else. And so to get them to come up in their giving, or to get them used to giving more, or making it more significant is the challenge. You know, yes, they're high on all of these, and on paper it all makes sense, and they've been supporting for years, but it's just been the same level, and to get them to come up, and to get them to realize when it's not the sexy organization, why they would give more. That's the challenge.
Yes, and you have to find that trigger. Right?
Sorry?
You have to find that trigger. What's going to trigger them to give you more? Right? You
Maybe
have
it's a new initiative that you're doing. Maybe it's something, I mean, it is hard if your organization is just here and you want them to do something different than what they're doing here. So there has to be something that you can tie into that, you know, what is it that, why do they care more about that other organization than you? What is it that they're getting from that? Is it a personal connection that they have there? You know, I kind of do a little bit more homework on figuring out, well, what are they getting somewhere else? And then what can you do within your organization to bridge that gap with them?
Yeah, I mean, when we develop these different types of schemas, right? It's to gauge the potential that a corporation or individual has to contribute to you. But behind that is that you then have to figure out how are you going to get them to contribute. And that's the part that you have to figure out, because we don't have the answers. I know if two wonderful women in my life, Karen and Tracy, if they come up to me and say, Sal, you know, we need X amount, can you help us with X amount? I'm going to say yes. Because I have that connection to them, right?
Write that down, ladies.
Yeah.
Wait, you better record it. Listen, have everybody sign that sheet, right?
If Eduardo and Christy come up to me and they say, then I have to, obviously I'm going to contribute, and then the question is, how much can I contribute, and how am I willing to do that, right? It's a new organization on my own. Right? It's not, Karen and Tracy's Bowtie Kids has been around since 2017. This is a new organization. I have two organizations that address kids or individuals. Me as a person have to what? Decide how much am I going to give? Am I going to continue to give? Right? I know that Christy and Eduardo's organization is brand new. They don't have all the program assessment information that I need, that I would want. But it's a brand new baby.
Right.
Well, and I think that just ties into why it's so important that you develop those measurements for each of your tactics, because even the areas where you didn't succeed, I think that's your area of growth, and that's your area to go back to your donors and be like, we could have done this much more or better if we had X, Y, Z. And so it's not that you want everything to be 100% amazing. We do, of course, but it's that area there where improvement shows that you need that can give that extra little push to your donors.
Yes, and it also applies to the established nonprofits. Right? Even the established nonprofits have to go through it, review their processes, review their program, constantly upgrade them or enhance them. constantly look at their environment, how it's changing, looking at also the corporate sponsors, looking at individual sponsors. So it's, you know, this is a continuous thing, and you have to constantly be very diligent and very vigilant of how the landscape is changing. Because as it changes, your task becomes a lot harder, right? Especially in Broward County, where people have decided to invest somewhere else.
And it's not that, like, if you have a low, if they have a low score here, it's not that you don't communicate with them or that you're not engaging with them. But I think this helps, you know, for me, if I was sitting down and I'm like, okay, I have 10 individuals here and the scale, you know, is, you know, you have them low, medium, and high, you know, then it helps me to figure out what does our communication plan need to look like, what's our outreach plan need to look like for these different areas, so that the ones that maybe have a low score are gonna just move up the ladder. Because you still wanna have all these different touch points, but what does it look like at this point, and what does it need to look like at this point?
Yeah, and again, you hear me talking about bringing a lot of people involved, right? Roxanne is the campaign person for United Way, right? Amanda, who's here, who's not here today, is the Director of Communications. I have Alan, who's a program person, right? I have executive directors over here, right? So if I'm a nonprofit, what do I have to do? I have to bring all these different individuals together to do what? To figure out what is the best strategy to cultivate not just corporations, but what is the best way to cultivate individuals. What is it about the corporations? What is it about individuals that are going to? What is it about them that's going to influence them to give to me? Right?
And
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, you know, additionally, I know it's a lot of work, you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about those kind of communication touch points that can be somewhat automated. You know, that you do want to stay connected in some way, and so you embed that part, so at least you know they're getting something. But then you have to figure out, okay, what are those more intensive one-on-ones, and what does that plan look like to supplement that other stuff that you're doing, so that you're not, you know, individually, like just one person at a time. You need to figure out how to be efficient so that you can, you know, get your tentacles out wherever you need them.
Yeah, so, yes, go ahead.
I just want to say too, this is so critical when I work with smaller nonprofits. You know, it's like, how do we get in front of those people?
Yeah.
And it's so critical that it is that team approach with your board members, with your volunteers, with your staff, because I've seen too, it's happened to me and it's happened with organizations that I've worked at. A key person either goes from the corporation or goes from the organization, and all of a sudden that relationship it's very it becomes very soft, because we're in the business of building relationships, and so it can't be just about the executive director and that person meets only with Joe Jones because they've had this long existing relationship, because that's where a lot of times it severs. And I know, working with corporations a lot, you know, going back to your point about the individual that distributes the money, if you have that relationship with a strong team member, because corporations they direct their giving based on the employees. So if you have a whole group of employees that are hugely supportive of what you're doing, you know, work with them to get to that person.
Yeah.
Because it's all relationship based. I mean, that's where we, you know, we're not selling anything as opposed to a business. We're selling hopes and dreams, and so it's really getting to that core that makes that magic connection.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, I implement and personally and professionally. Let me give you, I came here 6 months ago, and when I was hired, in the process of being hired, I told my boss, and then I told the dean, I want to build a nonprofit advisory board. I'm familiar with this area because I was a chief budget officer of Miami-Dade, and I lived in Hollywood. And I understand nonprofits because I work with them. But I came here without knowing who is whom in the nonprofit world here. And so, how is Selma Harder going to start building this nonprofit advisory board? Because in many respects, it's like, how am I going to find corporations? How am I going to find individuals? So me, given who I am, I started looking for these nonprofit associations. Because if I look at these nonprofit associations, guess what? Those associations are composed of little nonprofits. They have executive directors. So then I'm talking to our boss, Fred, this is my strategy. I'm gonna go talk to the Sandra Einhorn's group, the Nonprofit Executive Alliance, because guess what? It's a coalition of executive directors in nonprofit. Right? I'm going to talk to this other group over here because guess what? They also have a number of nonprofits associated with it. So, and then Chase and I got an invitation to go to this Women's Leadership Conference, and it was held over in Palm Beach County with Ray Lynn, who was here about 2 weeks ago. And there we met Karen and Tracy, right? And I invited them, hey, we're creating this nonprofit. Would you like to join? Sure, right? Karen and Tracy then introduced me to Jeanette, who's sitting back there, right? So what am I doing? I'm building, right? I'm building this nonprofit association, nonprofit advisory group, based on sort of what I know, right? But also on whom? On individuals in the nonprofit world that are recommending other people to serve on this nonprofit advisory board. Guess what? How are you going to find donors? Networking with the people that you know. How are you going to get corporations? Networking with the people that you know. Those are the leads. In addition to that, like I said earlier, if you're in a community, and if you don't go out in your community and find out how many people you can get sponsorship from your community, guess what? You're not doing your job. Because you got to find out people that are what? That are going to in your community, that are going to have a stake in how well you do, right? How well you're going to serve those kids in that community. How well you're going to serve that community in general, and those folks, what, need to be your supporters. Because you can't rely on what Larry says, on big corporations, because big corporations are what, impersonal. They don't know what happens locally. You as an organization need to what? Look around your area, build from that area out. That's what I did creating the advisory board. I started what? Small. Now we're having like 20 individuals, and it's getting bigger because Barbara's.
Because he can't say no.
Right? No, but because Barbara brings a different skill set that the board doesn't have. I mean, John Moreno is on the advisory board. Why? Because he's a foundation. When I talk, true story, on how Michael came on to be on the board, right? The dean wanted to create a nonprofit major, right? I'm looking at the board. I'm looking at the composition of the advisory board. We were lacking foundations. So I did what Sal does, gets on the internet, starts looking for foundations. Right? I come across the Jewish Federation Foundation. I look who the executive director is, Michael. Right? So I'm looking at Michael's resume. Right? Remember, I spent 10 years in Pennsylvania working on my graduate degrees. Michael was in Philadelphia when I was still in California. But I love Philadelphia, so I'm looking at Michael, guys from Philadelphia working at the Wharton School. Right? And then he goes to California to get his master's at USC. I'm a UCLA boy. Right? I wanted a rival on the advisory board. No, I'm kidding. Right? But he has a connection to California, right? To USC. A lot of my friends went to USC. They abandoned me and went to USC, not to UCLA. So I'm looking at Michael's resume, and I'm thinking, hold on, and I said, you know, come from a religious family. So Michael is religious. He's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania connection. He went to California to get his bachelor's at USC. I'm a UCLA guy, not a big deal. I want him on the board. I want him on the board. So I literally start drafting this email to Michael. Dear Michael, you know, dear Mr. Balaban, this is Marcelo Harlow, I'm associate professor at such and such. We're creating this advisory board. We're also thinking of creating this nonprofit major with the dean, new dean, and Andy Rosman. And so I went and I joked with Michael because I said before I sent it, I got the response was yes, right? So I sent it off, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And I'm thinking, dear God, I hope he joins, right? Dear God, I hope he joins. And so next thing, about 4 hours later, I get this one letter response from Michael, yes, right? So then I talked to my dean, our boss dean, Andy. I said, Andy, we have this Michael Balaban from the Jewish Federation wants to serve on the board. Can you meet with him? Right? And so Andy decided to meet with Michael. Right? They get along extremely well. Right? They did. They were at the meeting. They got along extremely well. I was surprised at how well. But guess what? That's how you build what? A relationship. That's how you have an individual serving on the board, then get tied to what? To the university, right? If it wasn't for Michael helping us out, you wouldn't be here, right? All of that to say what? That's the same sort of tactic that you need to get corporations, to get individuals to help. You have to come up with a strategy. How are you going to get them, right?
And then a strategy on how to keep them.
Yes,
That's the-
and that becomes a lot harder, right? That becomes a lot harder.
To keep them engaged.
That base I can, you know my personal life part of it, right? Keeping those
You just
relationships.
divorce themselves.
That's how well we get along. That's how well we get along, right? But then yes, you have to keep them. How are you going to keep
woo
them,
them.
right? Year after year after year after year. How do you go back to them and then what? Ask for additional money.
Well, and you can't expect them to do anything different if you're not going to do anything.
There
Absolutely.
you go.
You know?
Bravo, bravo.
Yes, right? Important. Building those relationships, maintaining them. Year after year after year. Right? As your organization grows, they have to stay with you. They have to grow with you. Right? Also understanding their connections to what? To other individuals. Right? Because it is a small family. Right? Our job, not just as academics and that sort of stuff, right? As an individual who's been involved in nonprofits, right? I know how well what? The jobs that you guys do, right? I know that you're helping to help your clients. You're helping to improve society, right? A lot of corporations give lip service. How are you going to actually convince them to do that? Individuals give lip service. They tell you they're going to do one thing, don't do it, right? Karen made a statement earlier on Super Bowl Sunday. When I met Karen, I said, I was joking around, Tracy was there, and I said, Tracy, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to hit on Karen. And so for bow ties, right? It's a bow tie girl, right? But my promise to her was kept. Right? It's still being kept because this beautiful pink bow tie is from the bow tie girl, right? What am I saying to her? That I'm a man of my word,
Yeah.
that I'm going to help, right? And they can count on me. Your corporations, your individuals have to be that way. How are you going to convince them to be that way? When they're on the border, when they have another organization that's competing for their resources, that's competing for their attention, right? That's competing for their emotion and everything else and their desire. The tactic is what? Gaining them, keeping them, having them grow. That is extremely hard. Right? It is.
Well, and it's about that authenticity that we talked about in the very beginning. You know, it's not a one-way street of just, getting in there and cultivating these relationships so that they give you something. You know, I think we have to be just as committed to what's important to them and what's happening in their organizational world, individual world, depending on which avenue you're in. So I think it's that mutual relationship, and to your point, Barbara, about, if you have, a board member that has a relationship with somebody and they're very, proprietary over that relationship with the donor, I think, and then maybe that's the plateau, I think it's important to cultivate those relationships outside of just the one-on-ones, because you never know how potentially new relationships will cultivate new giving. And so I think just kind of thinking outside the box of what you might always be doing, or this person is always with this person, or whatever it might be, think of it more holistically and how to engage that person, not just on the one-on-one, but with your organization.
Did you have a question? I think I might have cut her off. Were you going to say something earlier? No, I guess not.
No. Any questions about this section? Anything else about the strategic plan that you've been thinking about or want to talk about? Okay.
There is no exercise, by the way.
Yeah.
This is good
This
stuff.
is so much
It's
homework.
really
You got
good.
to, more than what you can do in class time.
Yeah, and again, feel free to modify these things for your purposes. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that copyright stuff because it's just it's for you guys. If you guys want to repackage it and sell it, I don't care. just make sure that some of
Fundraising
some of that money goes to your nonprofit, and I'm happy. Yeah, use it, modify it. You know, it's there for you guys. Everything that's on that canvas side is for you guys. Again, use it to the best that you can. Integrate it with your other stuff.
And then tell us about it later if you would.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
You know, I want to say, I mean, this is a great tool. If you're young in nonprofit culture and stuff, it can seem overwhelming, but I'm sure we've all had experiences where somebody says, well, how do we give to Ellen? How do we get to Ellen? Because Ellen gives to a lot of organizations. And so this is where it becomes really realistic, because you can say to that board member, usually that's where it comes from, is do you have that relationship that you can pick up the phone and call Ellen? And they'll go, well, no, that's your job. Well, no.
So let's come back down.
Yeah, let's come back down. Let's qualify her and her organization. And even locally, you know, people will say, well, how do we get to, Wayne Huizinga when he was alive was a big one. How do we get to Wayne Huizinga? He gives to everything. I don't know, do you know him personally?
Yeah.
Because again, I can't, and part of the reason I love this is I'm a relationship person. So I want to build a relationship. I'm not selling. I'm not selling widgets. I'm not selling gas. I'm not selling clothes and such. And so there becomes that emotion. And if you can't tap into the emotion at some point,
Yeah.
kiss it and release it, move it on.
Yeah. Kiss it and release it. I love it.
One of the things that worked to me, I think about wanting to reach a potential donor. I think about, okay, who do I know that may know this person? And I reach out to that person and ask them to make an email introduction for me. So now they recommended me, and now so I build a lot of relationship that way, and then I make sure I go and have coffee or lunch, sit down and have a relationship, and start cultivating that relationship. And thinking about, okay, events, where you want to meet somebody, where is this person you've gone to be at? And you show up at events and you make those connections that way. So, and even if somebody's at the event, you can introduce yourself cold turkey, or you can know somebody else that knows them that gives a good word for you. So just really getting people also to introduce you to people, so that way it already raises the standard and the connections.
Yeah, I mean so one, I want to publicly thank Karen, because one of the panelists that's going to be here later on, she would be on the panel if it wasn't for Karen, because it was just extremely difficult to get a high-level woman who's a philanthropist involved in them, because they're all busy. Right?
The men were super easy to get.
Probably right?
Talk about myself.
And so if it wasn't
Sorry, guys. I'm just kidding.
Karen is a lifesaver for us, because she was able to get panelists. But also, I mean, I was talking with Eduardo and Christy, and like I said, they have a brand new nonprofit on my own. We were talking last week, and I said, you should meet Dennis Haas, the executive director of Art Broward. And I said, well, he serves on our board, and all sort of that. So I personally wrote an email to Dennis. Dennis, there's this Christy was a professor at NSU in Eduardo. They have this brand new nonprofit that's to help place individual with disabilities in employment, and they're thinking of building a B&B to fund the foundation. So are you willing to talk with Christy? So within about an hour or so, he says, please give me give her my contact information. I'll meet with her. And so I just send an email to Christy. Dennis will also meet you, and here's his information, and so they're going to meet. But it's those sort of things that how the new organization, right? They're going to go talk to Dennis, who established Art Broward, who's been there for 30-odd years. He built that place up essentially from nothing to where it is now. He's built social enterprises. Guess what? He has a lot of value and a lot of information that is willing to contribute to a young.
Well, it's what it's all about.
Yes.
I mean, nonprofits helping nonprofits. It's the same community. And so when you're thinking about initiatives and programs that you might be kicking off, then think about how you can integrate other nonprofits and their resources and their target audience. Because if somebody's mission is to employ a certain population, well, maybe you need employees that you can hire in that population. So it's just kind of a win-win, and you know, the circle of love.
Yeah, so as Karen says, you know, it's those relationships, it's right, it's understanding, you know, you're not just individuals, but also the boards, understanding, you know, how to make those connections, right? Darwin has a lot of connections with folks in the LGBT, Women's Professional Golf Association, right? Those connections are important because those individuals that are there are likely to do what? Help his initiatives. He knows them, right? It's that community is very tight. It's right because he's the program director. That's a natural connection to what? To his organization and to the individuals that he works with, right? For him, those are relationships that he builds, relationships with professional women golfers to help out his clients. I was involved in baseball for many years. I developed, I don't know if you guys remember Manny Sanguillan, who was the catcher for the Pirates, the guy that played right field after Roberto Clemente died. I met him when I was working as a security guard. We struck up a conversation. He does a lot of work with Latin baseball players. I met other professional baseball players. And so for me, that was a natural, because I played baseball when I was a kid, and I know these, but that's a natural, for me, that's a natural environment that what? That if I start a nonprofit, where am I going to go? I'm going to go talk to those individuals what? That I'm comfortable with. Individuals that didn't know other people. Before we end this thing, back to Illinois. I mentioned this before, the Cancer Research Foundation, where Patty used to work. That foundation built very strong ties to the Chicago Bears. So whenever they had galas, when they had special events, they would go ahead and call the wide receiver, the place kicker. They'll call, you know, the quarterback. They'll call that individual to come to their gala, to bring not just to promote the gala, but also to do what? Cultivate other people that they can contribute to that foundation. But they use their connections to the Chicago Bears, knowing that these individuals were high profile. They will get the community involved, right, with their silent auctions and everything else, and that's how they built a lot of their corporate sponsors, the individual sponsors, because they had those connections and they were willing to not exploit them, but to utilize them to what? To benefit them in terms of
awareness out too. You know, even for the Aikido Foundation that I was a part of, we trained Randy White, who was a Dallas Cowboy, trained in Aikido, and so of course, our sensei was going to parade him around to make sure that everybody could see, oh, he did it, so you should do it too. So it's just those things that you just get those like-minded, and then that kind of individual or that notoriety that's going to help bring awareness to your mission. All right, this ties us perfectly into the approach. How do we make the right first impression? So we'll understand what constitutes a good first impression, different types of approaches, and then how to make a strong impression when you're at an event and when you're holding and hosting your own events. So a person's name to them is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So we all know that first impressions matter. Whether we've been on a first date or a job interview, that initial moment makes the biggest impact, and it sets the tone for the entire relationship. So whatever preconceived notions you might have in that one moment, you could spend the next several interactions undoing it or solidifying it. So just being aware of what those things could be. So has anybody seen that class of How to Win Friends and Influence People? Dale Carnegie? Yeah. We'll just have a... This is just a short clip from the...
So this may be a little crazy, but this one online business that I have going has generated me $19,000.
To every person, his or her name is the sweetest sound in any language. let's just talk about, someone walks into a room. So you're gonna meet someone for the first time. I think the first thing is, what kind of energy do I have? So when I meet someone, if I'm interacting with someone, to have positive energy, to smile, to listen, to say their name, it's common sense, not common practice, right? We're going about our day, we're busy and whatnot. Are we thinking about smiling? I mean, some of those things make such a huge difference because, Dale Carnegie says that to every person, his or her name is the sweetest sound in any language. So if I say Marguerite, if I say Andrea, or Mary, or Joe, I mean, it's just, it's part of really valuing that person and really having that connection with that person.
Sal, you do good at that.
Yes.
How many people do that when you meet people? Yeah. Love it. So being judged, I'm just going to pull all these up. So some say it takes about 4 minutes for a donor to decide whether or not they're going to give, and some people say it's even less than that. So here are just a few tactics and things to think about when you are meeting somebody for the first time. Any visible distractions, your clothing, maybe your shoes, you have a broken briefcase, whatever it might be. Just limit the visual distractions. Concern yourself with your body language. What are you saying with your nonverbals? Don't wear shirts or anything that are going to advertise maybe an organization that they might not agree with, or something that's going to put your personal life out in the forefront. Professional habits, be prompt or even early, state the purpose right away, make it clear that you're not going to waste their time. Building the rapport, correct name pronunciation. No matter how well intent we are, if you're uncertain about how to pronounce a name, then I typically would just say, I'm going to butcher this. Please tell me how to say your name. And I don't know about you guys, but there's about 1 million different ways to spell Megan. So even if I get an email and it's right there in my email, like it just takes 2 seconds to look and see how to spell it, right? But if they don't, it's a mental note. Ooh, they don't care or they're not paying attention, and it's just something that you think about. Physical actions, shake hands, maintain eye contact, use their name. The general things, don't be smoking or chewing gum. Respect their personal space. I think we've all been in a situation where somebody doesn't know personal boundaries and they might be in there. So, I think just being cognizant of, and I think if you're making eye contact, then that kind of personal boundary will fall into place. And I think we're all guilty of it, of making those snap judgments. But, do your best to fight the tendency to judge quickly. I think it's important for us to, give folks the benefit of the doubt. If somebody's having a bad day, maybe every day that most of the time I'm firing, things are happening up here, but maybe when I'm not feeling good, or for whatever reason, words just escape me for a day. Forgive me. Let's be there for each other and try to give the benefit of the doubt instead of jumping to a negative conclusion. So nailing the greeting. Shake hands like you mean it. Be confident, be different. So that be different, I think we're all, that question, how are you? When you meet somebody, no one is going to answer that question honestly. So what are some interesting new greetings that you guys use?
How's the day going for you?
How's the day going for you? That's easier. It still could be, you don't want to sit there and listen to somebody, going on and on about how horrible their day is.
But
that's
sometimes
indication
that
in
may
terms
be
of
that
where
they
they
may
are.
need someone
Right.
to just listen to them, and they will remember that you stopped and took the time to listen.
Not only that, it gives you indication in terms of where their mental space is before you head into a conversation.
You're
That's
like,
it.
ooh, I'm not going to ask him that today. Not today.
It's a really great day today. What a great day. Thanks for taking this meeting.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe compliment them.
Yeah.
Just compliment something about that.
Compliment them.
Yeah. I was gonna say I cyber stalk people, so so I know where they were, what they were doing, so I have a point to talk about when.
You don't say, how was that pizza last
Right.
night?
And the note to self. Let me take that picture.
I'm not even asking. I'm like,
Oh, man.
I really like the phrasing, I'm happy to know you. I think that that feels really personal, even when you meet someone, instead of saying, pleased to meet you, it's like, I'm happy to know you, I'm happy to have this time together. And I think that feels really nice.
That is nice, because you're saying that I don't really want to be anywhere else but where I am right now with here with you.
I think you should look on LinkedIn to find out what the person is involved with.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy and I met with someone a couple months ago, and he said, you really should learn about United Way. They do a lot of things for the community, and I'm like, I was the CEO of United Way. Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you really should do your homework before you
Yeah, that's
Yes.
so that you don't say things like that.
right.
That's a good one.
What did you
Not to
say? Thank you so much.
I didn't mention United Way at all. It took
Yeah.
maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, he looked at my LinkedIn and it said, "Oh, I know you're with United Way," blah blah blah, and it was too late.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what I use. I use LinkedIn before I meet with someone. And I do get offended too, also, if no one has a meeting with me.
They haven't done their homework.
They haven't done their homework.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and I'm an image consultant. That's my career. So I teach people and companies how to do all this.
Yeah.
And the first impression, when we're talking about first impression, even before you open your mouth and shake somebody's hands, that person has formed an opinion of you based on what they see. 93%.
Yeah.
That's mathematically correct.
Yeah.
And then this is the component of the other 7% that's going to win over that person. So usually, if I'm going to meet someone based on what they do and their background, then I dress appropriately. It's not the same way of addressing a creative person. I'm very creative, so. But if I'm gonna address a CEO, then I dress according to that, to their expectations. But when I meet them, I usually say something like, "Oh my God, I've heard wonderful things about you," and they're usually asked, "Oh, really? What?" Because people
Yeah, you better be prepared to back it up.
Exactly. You pinpoint, you like philanthropy, this is what I do, or you have, in my case, invested so much within the autism community, and then you find that point of contact.
And we're
So
going to talk a
that's
little bit in a second about the different
yeah.
approaches there that you
So
can
that's pretty-
incorporate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So take the lead, don't sit there and wait for them to introduce or anything, be confident. Read the room, to your point, if you're feeling some off energy, again, don't assume that they're just not a nice person or any of it, that millions of things could have happened to them before they walked into that room. And if it's hard, I think we all absorb energy a little bit differently. It's really hard to, if there's negativity or something happening in the room, for you not to take that on as your own, personality. But if you can maintain your authenticity and what, is important to you, then that's going to shine through regardless of what other behaviors or feelings are happening around you. I'm telling that to myself right now. Remember their name. So this is fun. I want to have, who will come up here and shake Sal's, shake hands with Sal?
I prefer a hug.
That's inappropriate. Okay, so wait.
My
Come
God.
here. Okay, so we're going to do different types of handshakes here, and then I want you to tell me how they feel. So the power.
How I feel?
How it feels to shake hands like that. So the power, the power. Yeah, you just. Okay.
I'm a delicate, sensitive guy.
Says the pink bow tie. So the boardroom, the clasping the elbow,
What?
Clasping the elbow. Right.
You mean that Trump thing?
Yeah. Okay. The crusher.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Submit, yeah. And then the wet fish. The wet Okay, I didn't know they all had names. Confident. That's what, you know, you kind of came in with to begin with. Confident.
Yeah.
One shake. One shake. Empathetic, be fully present. You're going to look them in the eye. Patronizing, when you clasp the hand. With
I did that.
but that's the politician right there.
No, so Michelle back there knows that I'm a little shy some occasionally. I don't know if you know Michelle.
Occasionally you're a little shy?
I'm a little shy, yeah. She noticed that 2 weeks ago.
Why? Did you wet fish her?
No!
What happened?
Huh?
What do you mean? Shy because now you're on the stage? Now I'm curious. So how did it feel? Which one did you like?
I prefer the nice, confident one.
Confident,
Yeah, I
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the empathetic, it's the one where you're looking in the eye, and that's a good one too, I think. No, the confident, you're just like, you don't have to be looking, it's just that one shake. Oh, I'm in there for business time. You know? And then the empathetic's like, hey, nice to meet you. You know?
Yeah, I prefer the more confident, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to see the wet fish one more time.
I know. Very. You almost think it's like the queen that you did. You know.
Kiss the ring, kiss the ring.
Kiss the ring.
Kiss the ring.
Unless your constituents are older people, because you do have to be cognizant that, you know, older people have arthritis, and so if you do the
Don't
handshake
bone
where
crush
it brings
your-
you to their knees, you're out, you're not gonna get money.
Yeah, I agree. And usually, no, I think it's okay to tell people. You know, if someone, I'm like, oh, you know, like they need to know, like they need to be aware of like what they're doing, right? So, thank you. But you know what's funny? I think everybody in the room would probably say, oh, my handshake is confident. You know, I think everybody's going to be like, oh, I shake hands great.
No, I have a very soft handshake. I do. Yeah, it's like, no, so Michelle noticed that I tend to be a little bit shy, a little reserved when it comes to meeting people. I really am. And so when I meet people for the first time, if they want to shake hands, I'm very like hesitant. And I try, and I don't squeeze and none of that stuff. And sometimes I can know that they're not comfortable with my handshake, but that's okay because that's me. And you know, it's like, but yeah, it's just one of those things that I'd rather talk, for example, with Maria. I'd rather talk about, you know, I've been to Montreal a number of times, right? And so I find other ways to connect with people. With Barbara, she's a consultant, I'm a consultant, right? With Eduardo, who's the treasurer, I know the functions of a treasurer. There's other ways that I with the handshakes, I'm not very comfortable with them, but I try to find other ways other ways that I can communicate that are more that lets them know that I care about them and that I understand.
To compensate for
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But isn't it, so when I first moved here, because I'm from the Midwest, and you know, the culture there is very much different. It's a little bit, you know, handshakes are, and it's an extended handshake. It's, you know, you don't come into your space. But when I relocated down to South Florida, I mean, I was overwhelmed with people that got into my space. And now, because I've been here so long, I mean, it's not a handshake, but it actually is a physical embrace.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that just being here? I mean, it's like,
Well, I'm from Texas, so we embrace too.
I would like
We embrace.
to take it a step further, and coming from what Sal mentioned earlier, I guess it's a joke. I am a mother. So I am here in South Florida, and I'm trying to be very aware of people's personal space, and that not everybody is a hugger. But I think it does have, say, a point of connection in a very cold and reserved world when you do connect in that way. But I think that there's a line there of finding out who the huggers are in the room.
So you'll find each other.
Stay together.
No, but there's
coming
the-
from the
yeah.
total other spectrum of not, people with stiff handshakes. And then I think your comment about your constituents is really important because I thought I was a confident handshaker, and I've had one time someone go like, ow, a woman breaking her bone.
Bone crusher.
So I guess you do have to be aware of whose hand you're shaking and change your approach.
When I meet somebody, I do get a handshake, and then if the meeting goes really well, I always say, "Oh, I'm from Nebraska. We hug each other."
Same
Yeah.
I close my hug like that.
I think that's a good rule.
I met one of our matches, our big little matches, and went to shake the little's hand first because the big was talking to someone else. And he goes, "No, we're from Miami. We kiss," and did like the two sides. And then I went to introduce myself to the big, and he goes, "No, we're from Miami. We kiss." And I was like, I was like, okay, I could tell that you're big and little.
Yeah.
But it's just knowing like who it is you're talking to and who you're around. And we were in North Carolina at the time for a conference, and I feel like if I weren't part of the Miami team, maybe they would just say, "Okay, nice to meet you," because they're aware that different areas of the country have different ways of approaching and
But I think the reason you
from
could,
Miami,
I think the reason you could have that interaction is because you took the lead. I mean, you went in like this, but if you both just stood there, then it'd be interesting to know if anything even happened. You know what I mean? But you taking the lead gave them the freedom to say, "Oh no, we didn't kid."
family, like it's
Yeah, and you also have to understand the cultural differences. Like, I mean, like you, Barbara. When I came to Miami, to Florida the first time, and I mentioned I was the chief budget officer for Miami-Dade. I'm a very reserved person. Although I like talking, I'm a very reserved person, very quiet. And like I said, I don't really shaking hands. But all of a sudden, my staff would come up and they would hug me, right? And so and me, because I'm anti-sexual harassment guy. I don't believe in any of that stuff. And the staff was, this is like culture shock, right? I'm a Hispanic, yeah, but I'm not a very warmy, fuzzy guy, generally. So the staff would come in and they would just like embrace me, the guys and the women, right? It's like I'm like, right? It's like, please, right? But it took me a while because I wasn't used to that. I was, and my mother and my father weren't very emotional, weren't very hands-on and they're kind of clingy. But here it's like when I do meet someone, it's like when I meet Darren. We bump fists as opposed to shaking hands, right? If I meet somebody else, like I always like shaking hands, so I'll shake his hand, right? But you have to understand what is it about individuals and how you're gonna make that connection. And again, if it's not, again with Maria and some other folks, right? There's other ways that I can communicate without touching, right? Or I lived there, or I visited there, I did this and that and the other. So you have to understand the individuals that you're come in contact with, some of the cultural background, that stuff. I mean, again, when I lived in some areas, I always say good morning to people, and they would just like walk by, and like I was like, "You idiot," right? Then what I love about the South, right, is that I've always said good morning. Somebody was always say good morning, right? That's a very good disarming way of if you're not going to shake hands, of meeting people. Good morning. How are you? Right? It's the same thing when I go to meetings. How are you? When I meet the president of this university, he doesn't remember my name, but he knows that I'm always in a bow tie. He knows that I'm always well dressed, and he comes up and he shakes my hand and says, "How are you, sir?" Right? Here's the president telling me, "How are you, sir?" Because he doesn't know my name. "How are you, sir?" And he has this big smile, and I tell him, "I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?" Right? And then we just sort of talk. But that's understanding people, understanding who they are, understanding some of the cultural differences is vital to what? Meeting people, understanding who they are.
Well, I think so much it can be like no-brainer, but I think we can have a tendency to just autopilot you know, and so just to maybe pep talk yourself before you jump out into a networking event, or, you know, get a focus so that you know this is what I'm going in here for, this is what I need to do, so that it just kind of reminds you to be present and aware of what's happening around you. So as we mentioned, it's like types of approaches. So the relevant, and I'm going to read some of these examples so that we can see what it means. So the relevant project approach. So Tina, thank you for seeing me today and for allowing me to share some information about your alma mater and its bold vision for the future. There's a new project I want to share that I believe you will find particularly intriguing given your interest in our athletic department. So you know something that they're interested in. You know, you have the impact approach. Without our donors last year, more than 10,000 children would have gone to bed each night without food. And without you taking the time to listen today, we wouldn't be able to give their families hope that their children's futures will no longer be so bleak. So you know what their motivation is for giving. Curiosity approach. It works well when you know one of your prospects' priorities. So, Mr. Sherrill, have you ever wondered what it's like to have autism? What it's like not to be able to predict or even able to control your own behavior? I'd like to tell you 10 things that children with autism wish you knew about them. So the compliment approach, which we had back there. I saw the article in the Charleston Journal that highlighted your recent efforts to enact better protection measures for marine animals injured in commercial fishing nets. You are a true champion for our cause, and I admire you for that. It must feel good knowing you are making a difference. So be sincere and specific, do your homework. The referral approach.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Berger, your neighbor Scott Silverman recently contributed a major gift to our organization. He told me that you'd been looking for ways to do more as a philanthropist and civic leader, and he thought that you might like to hear about what our organization has done to impact the landscape of this community. So let's take a few seconds and a few minutes here. Maybe we'll just have somebody read this out loud. Anybody want to take on reading the case study out loud and we can talk about it? Let me give you this microphone so everybody.
I probably won't need it.
You don't
I
need
probably
it.
won't need it. Shelby is excited. She just started her new job at the Giving Tree Society, and she is about to get her first glimpse of her organization in action. They're hosting a donor event for last year's largest donors, along with over 100 potential new donors. She gets to the venue early to watch the staff set up for the event. Shelby notices the extraordinary energy that everyone spends tending to every detail. The name tags are lined up perfectly, the sound system is tested repeatedly, the caterers prepare the food, and the centerpieces are beautifully arranged. She shadows a co-worker named Krish, who assures Shelby that all the commotion is totally normal. They finally finish setup, and then they wait and wait. All of a sudden, 200 people converge upon the long reception hall. Each guest must be registered and given a name tag and a table assignment. The staff is seated behind the registration tables, and for the next 25 minutes, controlled chaos ensues. It eventually calms as people take their seats and chat with their table mates. The board chairman walks up and down the aisles, greeting and thanking some of the guests, focusing primarily on the existing donors he already knows. Quite a few couples never get greeted, as the rest of the staff is busy with the logistics of the upcoming presentation. Then the evening commences. The food is delicious, the entertainment is on point, and the brief speeches are moving. The dessert reception afterwards also goes off without a hitch. Shelby shook lots of hands, and the guests seem happy as they leave the Giving Tree's newest brochure and receives the newest brochure and a small gift handbag. Shelby and the rest of the staff goes home exhausted. What would Shelby and her team have done differently to build stronger relationships? What could they have done?
Thank you. What do you think? Yes, ma'am.
I think you have to engage your whole staff and board to greet people as they come in. And I'm getting ready for my annual in 3 weeks, and I'm assigning board members to certain people, but there's going to be board members, executive director, specific staff members, where the entry point is, so that everybody gets greeted, everybody gets a personal touch point by one of our leaders.
Beautiful point. Yeah.
Why are they only utilizing the board chair? Your board can comprise of 25 members.
Exactly.
Each of them are important. Yes, the board chair has that name, but you have a vice chair, you have other board members, and we make it a point, you know, we're lucky that at our events, most of the times our board chair and most of our board is there, where we let them know, we want you to go say hi to these people at these tables and really give distinct assignments, not only to your board, but to your staff. You don't need your entire staff at registration. That's what volunteers and committee members are for. Your time, you know, you need to have 1 or 2 staff members there to, for anything that goes wrong, because no matter the event's 200 people or 2,000, one person is gonna be upset with where they're seated.
Yeah.
And to really have your board, have your back behind this, because they're the ones that have more time versus the staff to interact with donors and cultivate those relationships.
Perfect.
I got that the 25 minutes of registration and long lines and stuff like that, probably having a pre-registry online to eliminate some of that time being stood out in the
Registration table?
in the area, that then you can use that time to actually have like a mingling, networking, not networking, but just a free time to get to know who's all in the room and have a better chance at tapping into them.
Yeah, it's good too.
I was saying to the utilize those 25 minutes as well, so that the volunteers be able to register them, and then you have the staff, like they have a praise break, we have a praise break. Everybody on deck, let's get out here, let's, you know how they have meet and greets before the event?
Yeah.
And they really utilize that meet and greet.
Yeah. No, beautiful points, I think, yes.
Another thing, I'm having my staff member at the registration table with the volunteers, watching to see who's coming in. And so if someone is responsible to greet someone that they don't know, she's going to be texting me, because our registration table is at our front gate, and we drive them back to the tram to the area where we have the event. And she's going to be texting me saying, John Doe is wearing a red hat or whatever,
cool.
so that we make sure that we hook the people up to the right people.
That's great. I think it's good points that, you know, they had too many folks focused on the logistics versus the purpose of the event is to engage.
It says here, focusing primarily on the existing donors. Well, you don't want to focus primarily on existing donors. You want to focus on anybody you don't
New
know.
donors.
You don't know, and new people. Because again, if it is an event, then you want to make sure everybody feels equally impactful. And so again, like the one point was already made, as they're coming through the door, all your board members are having that conversation at some point with every last one of them.
Yeah, and that's an amazing point, because, you know, you're going to feel special when you walk in someplace and somebody gives you that one-on-one attention. Whether you've given, you're going to feel even better if you haven't even given to that organization yet.
So everyone went home, and because everyone was exhausted at the end of the day, but no one talked about post-production or post-data, or post-donor management, because all of those things, when we go home at the end of the night, yes, we're tired, yes, we are thoroughly exhausted, but you know, I think the work continues behind the scenes as well. So there was a nice portion of people that you didn't necessarily get to say hi to or greet. Let's send them a message of the photo that you caught them in, or you know, do something else to engage them beyond the process. So I think the post-production is really important.
So one of the things that we don't do galas. What I focus more on the events that we do is for people to either have the best fun ever. This is my motto.
Yeah.
So when people are going to already come to our events, they know there's going to be a great event.
Yeah.
And that they're going to be catered to. So for registration, what we do is I have young kids, because some of our donors, they still want to pay either cash or, you know, with a credit card or a check, and we have a good team for that. We also have focus on the board knowing that they need to talk to 3 to 5 people. I tell them a number of people, because usually if you let them know, like, oh, go mingle, they're just going to be with their own.
Yeah.
But then something that has worked for us too is that we keep it really short. What we're going to say, very usually I have to stop it. because people that are there
That
already
passion.
know what we're about. We go for the points and what we're trying to achieve at that evening. And when the time for asking for donations, we don't ask directly, but I come with my son who's autistic and he does it. So then, because people have a connection, he's very short and sweet.
Yeah.
You know, when you need to make this happen, please donate if you get involved. And people usually respond to that because they see somebody on the other end of what we're trying to achieve.
Right.
And for him he conquered the fear of speaking in public through our event. And then at the end, people leave always with the sentiment, the feedback of our events.
It puts the
Larry
heart,
can
it
say
gets
it,
your heart
because
in line.
I organized it, I don't like to say it. But it's extremely, extremely positive, and people are expecting the next event, and they really want to come, and they really do.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's a good point.
And we never lost at our event.
Yeah.
We've never been at loss. That's
What I think, thinking outside the box like that, because, we all go to galas, we all go to these dinners, and you sit down at your table of 10, and you're talking to those people, and,
I don't have to,
but
I
thinking.
have great music, DJ, dancing.
Yeah.
I pull people out to dance.
Yeah.
When I can. But I want people to feel that
Energy.
Yes, yes.
Was there any conversation about Shelby at some point, or even during the program, engaging people in the mission of their organization?
No.
I think so. People came, they had a good time, but they left with no sense or
They left with a
understanding.
brochure and a
Right,
goodie bag.
just a brochure, so and people learn and understand in different capacities. So a brochure might be nice for those that like to read and consider things later, but
But
nothing.
9 times out of
engaging in
10 it's
the
going
moment.
into the trash can.
Absolutely.
I do an event every June for all the young professionals in Broward. We always, it's like a party. There's no tables, there's music, whatever, but we always make sure we have a speaker who comes, and we're going to be fund everywhere, so we just bring someone who we funded, who we helped, and we always make sure they have a speech that they can say, so everyone at least hears something that they helped that year.
So they can get connected to why they're there and participating in your organization.
Those 25 minutes, that could be like a little slideshow. I don't know, those 25 minutes really bother me. But maybe a little slideshow or something that's running while they're coming to register, that's talking about their mission, their vision. So it's like, oh yeah, I remember when they did that event, just highlights of, I guess, what happened that year or about the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Also thinking about, your team and what their assets are and what each person brings to the table. You don't want your relationship person and that high energy person behind the registration table. You want that person out there talking to people because that's where they're going to make the biggest impact.
I'm with the mentoring ministry, and one of the things we did, this is the 5th year, and just had this really large high tea dinner, so to speak. It's high tea and then a dinner. And one of the things that we struggled, we put together registration tables and everything. And so we had it set up so that it was on the computer. We're not dealing with papers a lot. Of course, you always want to have, a set of that.
Yep.
But what we found was that when we took it out to the line and started, we saw that it was just kept building up. So we had iPads there. We just started going into the line and registering people in and giving their table numbers. And they thought that was just the best thing because they didn't have to stand. So you have to be prepared, I think, for the be prepared for what you don't expect.
Well, and it's the beginning, middle, and end too. What does the valet line look like outside when everybody, so this is the last impression they're going to have of your event. And if they're all waiting for 30 minutes for their car, they're going to be like, why did I get out tonight?
Or why did I use the valet service?
Why did I use exactly?
Yeah.
In the event that things do go wrong, and then
you have to have a plan B.
We always have folks stationed around any of our symposia to kind of watch the room.
Yeah.
See if anyone's feeling a little disenfranchised, to see if anyone's upset, angry, and we hop on it.
And I think, especially with the big galas, that you do need to have that traditional kind of sit-down meal and that stuff. I think it's important to also talk to the catering staff because, a lot of times, they're not representing you per se, but you want them to. You want to make sure that, they're, if they can answer professionally, that they're going to be engaged if anybody needs anything, you know, because so many times you'll be at an event and that's your only kind of interaction with what's happening around you, and that could be a very, you know, speaking from somebody that, you know, has allergies and things like that's kind of a pain in the ass, you know, that you know, that can make or break an experience.
Yes, and also just to continue on the line of what you were saying before that, sometimes they interrupt so much that you lose the focus of the night, and you have such a short time to win over your donors that when they're serving, they're so careless. So I usually train my staff not to do that when the speech is happening. But then for that, when she was speaking, I said, in each event I have a goal. What do I want my audience to know? And what is the message that I want to leave? You know, because I don't want to be repetitive in every event. So for every event, I choose something, I highlight something of the foundation that is new, that we're promoting, and kind of refresh what we've been doing, but I make that the focus of the night.
And do you tell that to all of your board members and to everybody that that's the message that we're...
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So like a well-oiled machine. I'm in charge of that, but I make it a point because then people are gonna get excited when I launch a new event because they're, oh, something is new with the, you know, it's not gonna be the same old thing. Because I think to charities that every year is the same thing. Is, you know, you go because you have to, but it's like painful.
Yes.
So yes, it's like I already know this speech. I already know what they're gonna say. But, I mean, am I the only one? Guys?
No.
Because it's like, please make it more creative.
Yes.
So in that sense, it's so important that you highlight that. So people are, and make new brochures too.
Yes.
So people can get it's like a new thing.
In general, I hate check-ins. So, and secondly, I've never had an event where people showed up who are not supposed to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
Please.
You know, but so to circumvent the people who are not supposed to be there, if you have a seating
Just a
chart,
second, guys.
you have a seating chart, you just put 10 cards on the table, they know where they're going, and then you can position key people at those tables with the people that you want them to be at, and you avoid that cluster. And when you're having a gala and they pay $500, like in their gowns, they're standing in line.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, like it's not classy.
No.
You know.
No. Yes.
So just like at a wedding, you would pick up your tent card, look for your table, everything's alphabetical order. It just runs so smooth.
And the logistics are extremely important, but also that one-on-one, because if they're standing, if something does go awry and you're like, oh man, our logistics is not so seamless right now, but if they're standing there having a good conversation with somebody, then that is also going to make that, they're not going to know. They're not going to know that this is happening behind the scenes.
That's the Disney approach
Yes.
for entertaining your guests if
Like,
they're
ooh,
having to
we're
stand
working
in
here,
line.
look here.
Yeah.
Right. So just some key points about at the events, more of what we were talking about. Know your target audience, and then, you know, the message. Set your sights on a single goal, to your point over there. You know, like, what do you want to achieve from this particular event? You know, you can't do everything in one time, but you can be successful if you're very targeted about what you want to achieve. Choose the right type of event. You know, sometimes a gala is not the right answer for your audience or for what your particular goal is. You know, we used to, at the university, you know, I was like, I know our students, our new incoming students want to have this amazing picnic, and they want, you know, to engage with each other and network and have all this additional support services here for them. And so, you know, I planned this huge thing and have, you know, the radio station come out to engage them. And all they want to do is sign up, register, get the information they need to go, and leave. You know? And so it's being aware of, like, what the actual objective is and not forcing your agenda on them. So I didn't do that again. Think outside the box, be creative. Develop a realistic budget. Realistic. Again, to the, you know, important to have a budget for each activity, whether, you know, your program budgets, if your event is, if your goal is to raise money for a specific project, then that goes into your project budget. Pay attention to the invitation. Again, that's the first impression that they're going to see of this event. So if you're going to spend any money or do anything that is outside the box, then your invitation can be that point that you engage first with your audience. So it could be, I mean, I think we've all had those really cool events where you get these unique invitations, you know, and it makes you more excited about going to the actual event. Create a dynamic experience. Again, engaging your board members to reach out and have those targets, those to your, not only your current donors, but prospective donors, so that everybody at your event has that touch point and feels special. And then heavily promote the event through social media, through your own distribution list, through word of mouth. During the event, you know, check in with customer service. Circulate your staff and board members. Again, not everybody needs to be on logistics. You know, highlight those folks that you have on your team that are really great at communications and relationships, and keep them out there mingling. Connect and keep it moving. After the event, your point is just as important. You follow up with your thank yous. Pursue every potential relationship. So again, they need to go into your CRM or whatever communication workflow that you have that's going to not only be in the automated communications, but also through your development and your specific one-on-one relationships. Examine and critique, you know, what did we do well, what worked well at this event, what didn't work well. Again, you know, I like trying new things. You know, and just like, you know, for that one picnic that we did, all of that was a new idea, thinking outside the box. Well, it didn't work. So what? You do something else next time. You know, you have to be able to, you know, turn on the fly and really figure out, you know, what's going to work and resonate with your audience. All right, so make a deliberate first impression, plan ahead, and choose the type of approach that is best for that particular company, individual, that fits your donor. Impress with well-planned events. All right, guys. Break time.
Great job.
So let's take about 10 minutes, and then 10-15 minutes, and then we'll come back, and I think we'll probably have to bypass this next, and then just jump into it.
Hey, ¿cómo estás?
Hey, how are you? Yes, good to see you.
Yeah, I'm trying. I tried every month. I tried. I used to be a
Just gonna put it out there. If you need to. I would do that because there's not a certain.
But I tried to keep it
And you know what? You know, one thing that we did is we have like this leadership professional network that we created for our graduate students, and part of it was like learning business etiquette, you know, how like, and they need to know.
No, I know that has
How to dress by
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
My team is under
No, we really
No.
get
very
Yes. So, and I'm not gonna, right, I'm not gonna be in a pantsuit, you know, it's just my thing.
No.
So.
That's my good personality.
Yeah.
Figure out, and then what is the best image for you?
this whole, the whole way you work.
The last study that we did takes
This is how
image with you.
So they see you walking down the street and they already don't like her, they don't like her.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
Left, right, left, right.
How our brain is being.
It's a computer and it's just putting things in buckets.
Yes. And
That's
then,
frightening.
yeah.
It's really hard to get something out of a bucket into another bucket.
And then people are getting the mindset, I know, I've
One
seen
is
this
women,
before.
it's even harder for us.
How are you? How's it going?
Because I would love to ask you if you think about it. Because I'm
We have
What usually
Christmas
wear, what
outside.
colors is good for me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, what's hot color tie should
Yeah. What you
So she's here as well, so
With you know,
we
with the
tend to
bow
represent
tie.
the bow ties.
Or the more sophisticated or the rock and roll I have.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming. Sure, sure. I mean, it's
Love it.
This is you, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what
I was supposed to do a bunch of stuff today. I was like, no, my calendar is blocked until 2.
Well, and if you
Did you reach out to
what are you communicating?
yeah, we're meeting next week.
they assume, so many assumptions.
The fact that I was Latina.
Yeah.
And for my Canadian side,
Yeah,
kiss
kiss
her.
it, yeah. You're like,
Boston, they were like, you're so bubbly.
I know.
Imagine in Boston, me.
No.
And then one of my friends, she's
I bet they love
the
you.
department in children's hospital. She's like, okay.
I know.
Pilot program in the summer.
I've already
7 schools in the YMCA.
Like sexual harassment. Yeah.
She's like, I got sued. To someone, she's telling me that.
Raise some money.
I know. It's
She's
hard.
like, I'm just because you're like so like your
Yeah.
mind is not there.
Yeah. Yes. It's so. I love that. I love it. It's true though.
I think on
I just don't. I mean, if someone has an issue, then I just wait for them to have it. I'm just going to be myself regardless.
And I think that we women interact because not only we have to say
We're constantly proving ourselves.
and then but I'm smart. Yeah, but also we
Oh yes.
to make them think that we are. We only
Yes. Yes.
we are
No.
in this society.
No.
So that's
And
that's
if you
my-
are
that's my
pretty
secret.
and smart, and you gotta screw somebody to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
It's
so
yeah,
I'm gonna show them how smart I am, but I'm not gonna, I refuse to like no. I'm like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's,
Yeah, it just takes time, and it takes, you know, lots of being beat up and trying, you know, trying.
So
Academia is like, I
created
mean,
my
it's
own
a man's world in academia for sure. And so, yeah.
So my sister teaches and
Yeah.
at university I taught in
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but I'm like
No. But, you know, it took you, like, it took me
my
time.
background is international politics, but then they
Someone mentioned that Eduardo was like looking like that.
I thought not only because I saw how they package a candidate and they sell it,
Yeah.
but also I said how many women are suffering because they don't present themselves right.
Right.
My God, they're not taken into consideration because they don't fit themselves.
Yes.
And their brain is being wasted somewhere.
Yes.
On all their effort and all the.
And we have all these doofuses that are out there.
You invested time and money into becoming a doctor.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I mean, for you,
And then,
tracking the
and so they're,
just because of the.
So it's really
And
different.
that was so shocking.
I know. Yes.
So anytime you really were
Yes, I
reach out, I love it.
And you know, I'm really wanting to start to go for our students for sure.
Yes.
well, we moved from Tampa.
Where's the
Tampa was very community.
Some of the grandparents that have really their children
When I go to Miami,
to the workplace and they have no skills.
I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so I
And
occasionally go to Miami, and if I'm walking down the street, we say good morning.
and then
And they just walk right past you, and it's like, oh, I'm in Miami. They don't,
not even
they don't
But in the I'm here, we go to the beach, and we hang out, they go to the center, I'm like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, and I had to go into corporate America, and I had to walk in there like this.
And then, yeah, from
But yeah, and I will say, people I know, once I know them, most of them are.
It doesn't feel right to me.
And then that makes 45 and then things will be restructured. It's amazing. All these are really good, and this investment is not huge. You probably have some of those pieces.
Yeah.
And then you will start building and supporting.
Yeah.
And then I just tell them the seasons are the year, you're very easy going, and then you can do it on your own. You don't need me. Like we live independently.
Yes.
So what am I going to
Very
do
cool.
this for? You know.
Yes. Yeah. So you're gonna be confident, you're not gonna be overwhelmed.
Once you master those 10 pieces,
Then you can piece everything together. Yeah. I do need to get some water.
I need to eat. I'm so
But I know that, like, one of the best things to do is let her go.
Yeah, they're hot tears. We have tea, we just don't have enough bar.
That's where I stopped. Like, oh.
Well,
But well, we'll address our parents. I was trying to figure out if it'd be better for y'all under there, but it should be okay. Joe, oopsie. Obviously, there's some cutting and pasting happening there.
Are you really?
I live on overdrive. Actually, literally, so I see public is the bottom of the top. Yeah, but today,
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking of buying tickets.
Oh, yeah. I know. Hard rock right there, and it is not cheap. But it's a fabulous. It's like anytime meetings, I always learn at the table.
Across the street.
And where are you?
I remember the first time I went to the Hard Rock. It was back in 2005. And we walked in and we saw Barry White's red shoes, the slippers and this other stuff. And we're at the time. So we had a fun time at the
It is, it's very different now. It's really state of the art. The amphitheater for the Hard Rock Live venue, new restaurant concepts, and it's really quite interesting.
Tracy's going to work out. Like I would go to
I could go to Seminole Truck. You need to get No, I've been in the casino industry since 1979. My main workout, Atlantic City, Las Vegas, the islands, I played the credit ring. What I always had passion personally have as well. So when I moved down here, there was the Seminole Truck. So the musicians get bigger, and nobody had thought about creating a vision or even productions. Nobody else is doing it, so I started doing it. And it just got high, but on top of the position I already do. But it's since it's such a personal thing for me. I love it. I love what I do.
We're waiting on one more panel member, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So
yes.
Keep the agenda moving along and give you guys plenty of opportunities to ask questions, get engaged.
So let's start. with the panel. We're waiting for Joseph. I don't know if he's parking or something like that, but let me introduce the two panelists that we have. So we have Susan Renison, Vice President from the Seminole Hard Rock Cafe Casino. She's the Community Affairs. She's been involved in the casino business 17 years. It's wonderful to have her here. She's going to bring a different perspective on philanthropy, up and out the community. And it's, again, I also want to thank again Karen for introducing Susan to us and for her participating on this panel. And I mentioned John Moreno Escobar earlier, and I said that he puts me to shame because he started his nonprofit when he was at Baruch City University of New York. Baruch College is the flagship of City University of New York. So he's from Bogota, Colombia, originally, came here when he was in his teens. Started his nonprofit, helping out immigrant students. And so now he's the executive director of U Business Foundation. And I met John at the nonprofit breakfast at the chamber, maybe about 2 months ago, something like that. And we were introducing each other, and then I heard John Escobar Foundation in my ears, like got bigger. So I said, I need to go meet that guy. And so I met John. He served on our advisory board. And so we're glad that John is here as well. And we have Megan's going to be the moderator of the panel, but we encourage you to really be engaging with Susan and John, especially on so if you have questions about how do you attract corporations, donor donations and that forth, and so they will be able to help you out. Megan?
Yeah, so we did just provide some general talking points that we'll kind of go over, but again, for you guys as well, but for you, if you have something that you just want to share, feel free. It's a pretty casual, organic group. It's very engaging. Message received. Okay. So what motivated each of you to get involved in the nonprofit sector or philanthropy? And if you guys, I do have the mic, so if you can't hear, just let us know and I'll give it to you, but I think it should be pretty good.
Does this start?
Sure.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I started in the casino industry in 1979 in Atlantic City and wound up through a very long path down here working for the Seminole Tribe of Florida for it's almost 18 years now that I've been with them. When I started working with them, they did not have a philanthropy division. It was a casino, it was just opening. Nobody knew what the Seminole Tribe and what the Hard Rock was going to be back when they were getting ready to open here. When I was in Atlantic City, I was engaged very, very fully in philanthropic endeavors. And one of the things that I kept being pushed towards was the Miss America pageant. And I'm giving you a background to tell you how I got where I was. And Atlantic City was known for that pageant. And I was president of the South Jersey AIDS Alliance. I was on the hospital board. I was involved in the Kidney and Cancer Foundations. And the people from Miss America kept pushing. You know, you really need to be involved with us. And I looked at it very carefully, and I thought, you know what, if I'm going to spend all this time and effort, it's just not going to be to raise money for prom gowns and things that, you know, even though they say it's okay, scholarships, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And I very much felt it was way more of a community-focused entertainment event than it was philanthropy. And I fought against it, and when I moved to Florida, and my boss, Jim Allen, who is the head of all of Hard Rock now, and with the Seminole Tribe, the first thing he asked me to do as part of my events position was be on the board of Winterfest. And I looked at Winterfest like I looked at Miss America. And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, you know, you're asking me to engage my time and energy and put money from the tribe and hardworking people into an event that is community driven. It does nothing to really help people. it entertains them. And he was like, well, it's not your choice. I'm telling you, you have to be on this board, you have to be engaged, you have to get involved in this. And I did. And it turned out to be the best thing that happened to me, as well as the Hard Rock, for several different reasons. The community is very, very engaged in things like a Winterfest boat parade. So I met through that organization so many amazing philanthropic organizations and charities that I've been able to get the Hard Rock involved in through them. So even though Winterfest was our main focus, everything that we've done from the beginning has spawned from being part of the community. And I learned a very valuable lesson that maybe a boat parade and entertainment is not necessarily charity, but it does engage so many different branches of the community and spawns a huge philanthropic effort for the Hard Rock and me individually as well. So that's how the Hard Rock actually came to be part of the community and part of philanthropy and me as well. Thank you.
So I think my journey is a little bit different. I came from another country, with another language, with another culture, where I was exposed to scarcity, right? There was things that we didn't have 24/7. There was no philanthropy in my DNA when I was brought up, right? I came to New York. I spent 14 years of my life there. And while I was in New York, I was just sharing outside that the first exposure I have to the non-for-profit world and philanthropy was by creating my own non-for-profit, and it was because of a passion, right? I think that we all here are driven by, mentoring or education or access to food or, giving back by giving scholarships or really creating something that is meaningful. And while I came into this country and I got into Baruch, I met a person who was undocumented, which is actually my best friend now. For me, coming from another country, it was hard to see that there was no resources for undocumented people, especially students in New York City. It was really small portions of scholarships. There was no access to information for parents in their language. And how I got into philanthropy, this question that you guys bring into the panel, is because of a passion. It was because of me trying to see how we could provide resources to individuals that didn't have the opportunity to really have a playing field in education access. So that's how I started. I started my non-for-profit while I was in college. We became the first program in New York City to provide resources to undocumented and immigrant families, scholarships. We did workshops, bilingual workshops. All our staff was bilingual, Spanish and English. And then we exploded we started in one high school, then we became part of all the network of schools in New York City. And it was a really interesting thing because I was a person who was learning about the culture of the country, but also at the same time, I was exposed to creating a board. I was exposed to fundraising. I was exposed to corporate partners and individual giving, and I didn't know anything about this, right? So we were 3 founders and from the same college, and it was really tough. After that, I took a position and I left, and I worked in a startup technology education organization called New Futuro, which was the first ever startup technology company to work with the Latino community at a large scale. We raised Series A and B funding up to $30 million from private organizations and equity. And what we did was that we created a team around the country in the 5 major cities where Latinos are. So Miami, Houston, Texas, LA, New York City, and Chicago. And that's where we had 5 different directors, and we deploy a team to produce a college fair bilingual with Telemundo and Univision, and also a high-tech piece, which was a platform where parents in Spanish and English could get, and students could get information about preparing, applying, and paying for college. Fast forwarding that, I took a break, a year off. I went to a World Cup in Brazil for 3 months, and then I came back. And when I came back, I got engaged now with the different side of philanthropy, right? Now I work for the university. I was the first Latino to serve with the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs at the City University of New York. So I did a full circle. I did an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's out of CUNY, and then I got to work for the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. And there I learned how to raise money with big foundations, right? So the Robin Hood Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and individuals in New York who, you know, they write you a check for $1 million one night because they feel that whatever that you're doing, it's great. So I got that exposure, and while I was doing that, I also learned that I wanted to get into, now back into the non-for-profit world. So I spent 2 years there, and then after that I created another foundation, which was the Colombian Scholarship Fund. So I'm from Colombia, I wanted to give back. I was already an executive level, and I was like, this is time for me to now raise money for Colombian people in New York State, and we raised around $2 million to provide scholarships to Colombian citizens and residents and undocumented students. Really interesting that this happened because, again, philanthropy was in the center of it. I needed to raise money. All the experience that I learned through, you know, through FIRE at the beginning was really handing out because I knew how to talk to funders, private individuals, non-for-profits or foundations that were giving money out. We were able to raise a lot of money and give scholarships. Fast forwarding, I moved to New York, here to South Florida 3 years ago. I worked for the superintendent of schools as the director of strategic partnerships, bringing money to the school district to provide scholarships and help some of your programs to be engaged with the school district. And 6 months into that affair, which I call was a government affair, that was the only industry that I kind of like got a glimpse of it that I didn't like, and I left after 6 months. Then we 3 years ago, 2 years ago and a half, we created the UVisit Foundation, which is a combination of two things really quick. And I know I've been really long on this, but I wanted to get a good glimpse of why I got into philanthropy. The CEO of the UVisit Corporation, which is the only company in the world who created virtual reality, virtual college tours for more than 650 universities in the country, came to me and asked me if I wanted to lead the foundation. And the purpose of the foundation is to, one, provide these virtual college tours to in-need youth in the United States for free. And so, of course, I said yes. And then we have a goal to raise $10 million in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And that's how I got to become the executive director. We have programming in Houston, New York, and here in South Florida. And now we're launching a new program. We have raised close to $1 million in the last year, moving into raising more than $2 million next year to complete our goal of $10 million in the first 5 years. And it has been a great experience. It's been full circle now that I'm the executive director of a foundation that has to do with technology and education and access. So I'm really, really happy to be in this position now.
Thank you. So what role should philanthropists play with respect to strengthening the financial stability of local nonprofit organizations? And it could be philanthropists/foundations from your each unique perspective.
Okay, so from a casino perspective, which is the only thing that I can speak to now, I can speak to a personal situation, but from the casino side, number one, you do it because it's the right thing to do. The casinos make a lot of money, and that's a fact, and they need to give back. And the Seminole Tribe of Florida was extremely poor for years. They are an unconquered tribe. They lived in the Everglades. They are the only sovereign nation that never caved into the United States government. All of their land is sovereign. They lived off of tourism. They lived by selling woven baskets on street corners and all of the little crafts. And people in the Florida community, especially here in South Florida, were extremely kind to them over the years, and the Stranahan House, and there are many different charities that helped Native Americans get by when they had nothing to get by with. So when the success of the Hard Rock took off, the Tribal Council felt very strongly that it was their not only duty and obligation, but the right thing to do to give back to a community that took care of them when they needed to be taken care of. So one of the things I get all the time is, why do you focus in Broward specifically? We do things in different parts of South Florida. But my direction from my tribal council, who are born and raised and lived right here in this community, is that the money that's raised here should go back here. So they have directed me to make sure that as much as we can specifically put back into the community, we do. There is a Hard Rock International Fund that takes care of charities in different countries all over the world. They have water programs, they have music programs, different things that are focused on international projects. But this particular casino focuses on Broward and how we could help the community make it a better place for the people that live and work in the community specifically that we're in.
So I will just ask the audience, how many of you work in non-for-profits? How many of you feel that your position or someone else in your organization, it's not secure, their position is not secure because of grant funding? Raise your hand.
I know that happens in our organization.
Right?
Yeah.
How many of you think that the way that you deliver your program is always attached to that grant and to those dollars in the reporting you have to do? Right? So I'm asking these questions because I do think that philanthropy has to change. Fundamentally, we are attaching dollars to results, which is great, but we're not letting organizations to come up with innovative ways to tackle issues in our society. When you apply for funding or for a grant, you become part of this rat race of getting funding. So if the grant says we're going to provide 15,000 books for inspirational speakers, and then we need to check that box. We need this grant is going to be for food insecurity, check that box. And then I always hear non-for-profits and executive directors or directors of development, we go where the money is. We don't go where our community is. And in our foundation, we are trying really heavily to influence those circles where we are, to make sure that foundations and funders are letting organizations explore new ways to really put the funding where they really need to have their funding. A lot of organizations have instability financially because usually a lot of their positions are grant-based. So it's a 5-year funding, and after the 5 years, what happens? Oh, we evaluated this, so you are going to eradicate poverty? Are you going to eradicate access to education? Are you going to eradicate any issues that you're fighting for? And the answer is no. You will never do that. So one thing is, in order to really make sure that philanthropy, it's tackling issues of financial problems with non-for-profits, it has to be with changing the way that we fund the programs. It is an issue. Nobody talks about it, but we all know about it. The second thing has to be with making sure that we stop the double dipping in funding. It happens all the time. If I ask here in this room how many of you do educational programs, maybe half of the room goes up. And then if we go deeper into what kind of educational programs that you do, I bet that if you talk to the person next to you, you're doing the same exact thing. CSC has become really an expert, and I was meeting with them yesterday giving some advice on how to really stop doing that double dipping. There's another issue when it comes into philanthropy and financial stability, and it is about really putting everyone in the same table and talking about what are the issues of our community and how we could tackle them. If the issue of access to higher education is an issue, all right, who's working on that? Who's working on food scarcity, right? Who's working on, making sure that adults are getting services? And then really looking into streaming the funding to programs that are proving to give results. And not in a period of 2-5 years. It's supposed to be a long time. Because we have issues at the federal level, at the state level, at the city level. They have billions of dollars in funding. Giving you an example. Access to housing, affordable housing. We have billions of dollars dumped into that issue, particularly, for many years. Now what we're learning, this county and Fort Lauderdale as a whole is one of the most, one of the counties that has the less, affordable housing in the nation. And we dump billions of dollars with the Sodatsky Fund. We never use it. It is because that money that comes from philanthropy is put into these issues one drop at a time for one specific period of time. And we have to change that model. And as foundations, and where I'm sitting now, we have to think into how we could support the best model. And as the other executive directors and the other organizations, you have to do one thing or two things that are really impacting our community and let this organization be the leader in the space for that specific issue and support that organization to do that. So I think that is how we really fix, I think, the philanthropy going into non-for-profits and their financial issues, because I do believe that a lot of non-for-profits are always going into the rat race of funding a program. $5,000 for doing 15 workshops, I'm going to go to do that. $10,000, I have to go to do that. And they lose focus of what is your purpose as an organization and how you could find the right funding.
Do you know of any communities that are doing that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to extend into this answer, but so there is a lot of communities out there that are doing great work. One of the communities I could tell you is New York City, because that's where I grew up, and that's where I go every other month because we have programs there. But New York City specifically has been really intentional. The Ford Foundation and the Robin Hood Foundation, especially the Robin Hood Foundation, decided they want to do only technology, only access to education, and only helping adults through technology. That's their hub. They created a whole infrastructure, a whole place where people like any of you could go and say, like, hey, Robin Hood, I have this technology idea. I want to get into your incubator. They give you 5 years of funding to incubate your idea. They give you 5 years of funding to execute your idea. They give you 5 years of funding to, be and stay in the space. And then when that funding finishes, they tell you you could go to this, to this, to this, to this foundations and keep your program alive. But it has to be intentional. I think that a lot of foundations are doing great work. In California, we have incredible work happening as well. In Texas as well. I think here in Broward and even in the South Florida area, there is a lot of now intentional ways of doing this. The Children's Services Council, specifically here in Broward, it's been extremely intentional to say, hold on, we have to look into what is in this space and fund the programs that are really helping, every single of these areas. I received the catalog yesterday from one of the chief executive officers from, one of the executives from CSE yesterday, and they used to give me a binder. When I used to work at the school district, they used to give me a binder with all the programs they fund. This year they give me a guide. There was this thing, and you could ask for it. And it divides every single thing by the topics that they fund. So if they're funding, adult services, then you could look in the catalog, who's getting that, which organizations are doing it, and in which schools they are, or which communities they are, or which communities they're working with. And I think that is when you, as a non-for-profit, are going for funding, that you understand, oh, I could partner with Big Brothers Big Sisters, with Hispanic Unity, with Urban League, and let's come together and talk about what we could do. Because when you meet with the Urban League, when you meet, and I have done it, with YMCA South Florida, with Hispanic Unity, with, you name it, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They're doing the same programming. Of course, it's a niche community. They work in different communities, but it's the same programming. And I bet they have never sat down and said, we're doing that, Promise Youth program. How we can make it better and raise more money. I bet they have never have the conversation. If they had, that is great. We're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Any questions on that?
Question for Susan. So we're an emerging nonprofit. How do we get your attention? How do we get your
Okay. So there's criteria. Great question. Well, we have very specific criteria. Number one has to be a 501c3 that's established. Number two, again, because we are a casino, I have to find the right PR value. It's not only about, and I wish I could say it was about just doing the right thing, but it isn't. I need a reason to give to this specific charity because there are thousands of them, even in Broward. If I could tell you the letters, the proposals, the phone calls, the emails that I get on a monthly basis, it's almost mind-boggling. So to filter through that and find the right ones to get involved with, it has to be the right fit for a casino.
So it's the width for the casino.
We try to stay away from, even though we support children's charities, we do things that do not bring children to the casino. We do not want children in the casino. We don't want them exposed to gaming. It's not the right thing to do. So how we get around that and support these charities are things, and I'll give you classic examples. Some of the organizations that we do fund are the Nat Moore Foundation, and I'll give you athletes because we're at Nova and it's connected with the Dolphins. Nat Moore, Jason Taylor, Henry Crockett, the organizations like that focus on children, but still get us publicity. Jason Taylor comes to our property with all his funders who have money. So it's a double dip situation for us. We're supporting the charity. They're not paying for the event they have. We're paying for it. But they're bringing to our property people that have money. So we are exposing them not only to our casino, but to our restaurants, our theaters, our entertainment, our hotel rooms. And we're getting red carpet publicity from it. So we're in the papers saying we're supporting this organization, so I'm fulfilling that need from our PR and marketing and advertising department, that it fills their bucket with the right amount of impressions on social media. I'm fulfilling our community role because we are supporting a foundation that is locally based, and the organizations such as, because I mentioned it, the Jason Taylor Foundation, Henry Crockett, Nat Moore, I'm personally involved with. Every organization that we give larger dollars to, I either sit on their board or on the committees, or I know a way to track where the money is going.
So when you say larger dollars, what kind of dollars are you talking?
Well, it depends. Like Boys and Girls Club, I'll do an event for them for $50,000. They come to the event, we pay for their food, we pay for the beverage, we decorate the room, we provide the entertainment. They're getting $50,000 worth of in-kind for those kind of particular organizations. Our big money goes to bigger sponsorships that get us additional dollars, like a Winterfest, which is community-based, but again, it does have a nonprofit side of it. So by funding the organizations, and we are a big supporter of the YMCA, of Boys and Girls Clubs, of Big Brothers Big Sisters. I sit on the board of 2 of them. We spread our money around. I'm involved with the Art and Culture Center, with the Ann Stork Center, with the Kidney Foundation. There are so many of them. And we try, we've gone through different philosophies where if there is a big bucket of $5 million, there's one school of thought that says, pick a charity. Let's make one big impact a year. If you're focused on breast cancer, let's give that $5 million to Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. We do this big presentation, we give them $5 million, yay, we're a hero, we did $5 million worth of work. That would be a very, very easy thing for me to do. It would be a very easy thing to let the casino off the hook. I wouldn't have to work hard, but I don't believe it's the right thing to do. I don't. I believe that we need to dive deeper in the community. And it's not all about that $5 million check. It's about how far we can make our dollars stretch. So it's not only writing a check, but a lot of the organizations that I work on, as I said, I either sit on their board or work on the committee. We work with them to assist them with the fundraising, using the expertise that we have, that my staff has, to teach them how to raise additional dollars through in-kind contributions, through different avenues where they could raise money themselves and get more involved with other foundations and cross-pollinating, as you had said, which we do with a lot of our organizations, to try to put them together. Because I have a personal passion for it, I'm very, very leery about just writing a check without being personally involved in the organization, because then I don't know if I'm doing my job correctly. I don't know where that money is going. I had an event yesterday with the Dan Marino Foundation and JDRF. We paired them together, Juvenile Diabetes and Dan Marino. Both of them, one is on autism, focusing on autism. The other one is juvenile diabetes. And we did a huge fundraiser for them yesterday, brought the two charities together. They were both involved with it. They will get the proceeds from that event. And they worked with us to produce that event. They were personally engaged. We did a golf tournament. They had their people out, with the golfers. They were doing food out there. They were engaged. So what that did for them, at the end of the day, Mary Parton, who works with Dan Marino, met 10 additional people who have money, who now is on her mailing list that she's going to be involved with. The Juvenile Foundation, they had this kid there that was the most amazing speaker. A bunch of these golfers fell in love with this kid and are going to stay in touch with this kid and get him golf lessons, and they're going to be involved with JDRF now. So there are so many creative ways, if you really take the time to think about it and get these organizations involved with each other and engaged with us, as opposed to just writing the check. And it sort of cross-pollinates, just like you were saying, where I'm trying to make those kind of steps. And as the person that writes the check, you have to be personally engaged in it. I believe that with my whole heart and soul. And people have said to me, you're not irreplaceable. And I know that. I know nobody is irreplaceable. But I guarantee you, when I leave the Hard Rock, they're going to have trouble finding somebody that has my passion for this community and the charities in it, because I am so personally engaged with the Seminole Tribe of Florida. I was here when they were digging in the ground to build that casino. I was with them every step of the way. I understand their philosophies and I understand their need to give back. So it is not a job for me. My job really with them is creating events. I started doing community affairs because nobody else was doing it, and because I felt that somebody needed to do it, and got engaged with my own passion and engagement in wanting to be part of the community. So yes, I get hundreds of letters. It just needs to be the right thing for us to check all those different boxes. So,
how did you pair those two organizations together? Sorry.
How did I pair them?
Yes.
The chairman asked me to find two organizations that focused on children. But again, to do it in a way that was not really involving children, other than we had this adorable little kid out on the golf course. But we didn't do it in the casino. We did a golf tournament. And we don't always go to our casino customers because we don't want them thinking that we're forcing them to give money back to us that way. We take a lot of their money. So when we do events, it's true, we take a lot of their money. So when we do events like this, we tend to, of course, invite them, say, please come as our guest. And we go to our funders, or not our funders, our vendors. And we go to a liquor vendor, a food vendor, people that the casino gives money to, and say, okay, this is our charity. We want you to donate either as some kind of in kind, etc. The reason those two organizations is, number one, there are a tremendous amount of diabetics in the Seminole tribe. Native Americans are prone to diabetes. It's a genetic disease for them. So when I did research on it, I found that JDRF was very engaged in research and trying to really stop the disease in different ways than some of the other diabetes organizations were, which is something that will impact future generations of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. The Dan Marino Foundation, they focus on autism and work programs for children with autism. So they have a chef's program that engages young adults, I would say, that are in their early 20s that we're allowed to hire in the chef's program, and they teach them how to be sous chefs. They have an amazing school, and we then hire these sous chefs and bring them into our kitchens, and it's sort of like a work program for them. So that's how I paired the two organizations.
I gotta just add something. When you said that that people tell you that you're irreplaceable, I usually tell them, but I'm único, because nobody can be like me. So next
I'm going to use that.
Use it, because nobody can be you, and that's actually something extraordinary. So thank you for all you do. And our organization also works with young adults with autism, and we create programs. We have one in Broward College right now. It's called Avionics, and we also have another one, a center called Spectrum Tech for software and technology testing, where they become certified in various technologies and software specifications. But we would love to have them, or to be part of what you do. We're expanding in the community to do more vocational or more serving. Are you, as a, let's say, employee, willing to have them? Employer. Are you willing to employ some of them in their?
Well, I'm not the person that makes that decision, but what I could promise you is I will put you in touch with the right people that do, of course. And yes, so our human resources department tries very hard to engage people in the community that, not only fill a checkbox on the but that are diverse, that have different challenges, that if they are capable of being part of the workforce, they do try to create that. We are only 17 years old. I mean, it seems like the Hard Rock has been around for a long time, but the Hard Rock, or the Seminole Tribe, bought the Hard Rock name. When they first opened here, when Jim Allen came in, the Seminole Tribe had a couple bingo halls that were relatively successful because they were a sovereign nation. And yeah, they made a little bit of money. And when they decided to go big, when Jim Allen decided to partner with the Seminole Tribe, he said nobody is going to come to a casino that says Seminole Tribe of Florida and think it is, sexy. And it's, like if you've been to our Hollywood casino, it's very smoky. It's a specific that patronizes it. So they wanted to up the brand, so they paid Hard Rock, the Hard Rock brand, $25 million for the licensing fee to be allowed to use the name Hard Rock. Fast forward 3 years, they were so successful that they bought Hard Rock. They bought the entire Hard Rock, lock, stock, and barrel, it's in 76 countries. They bought the cafes, they started developing casino hotels, they bought the entire memorabilia collection. The only Hard Rock that they did not buy initially was the one in Las Vegas, which was owned by the original founders of Hard Rock, Peter Morton. And just over this past year, they finally bought that one and completed the full cycle. So they own everything due to the success. But if you think branding isn't important and marketing isn't important, you know, that is what it's all about. Because when you say Seminole Casino, you say Hard Rock Casino, there's a different thing. So it took that little Seminole Tribe bingo hall into, we just built a $1.5 billion expansion with the Guitar Hotel. So, branding.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to add maybe for the rest of the people here, because I think this was in a specific conversation, but you know, during the different leadership positions, I learned one thing is that you have to have dates with your founders, right? You can just go in the first meeting and ask for money, right? Like you having a date with someone, right? The first night you go for dinner, drinks, maybe you dance, maybe you get close. If you're Latina, you get close. If you're not, but that's how I approach my funders, right? It's like first meeting, spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes on the phone or in person, and you know, we try to see if this is going to add value, if we like each other, if we're not. Then the next one, it's like, come and learn about what I do, which is something that we do a lot. We're either a funder who's giving an in-kind money or who is giving us a check. It's like, hey, you know, Susan, come with us. We're going to show you how we do virtual reality. What this is our kids, meet our kids. And I think that that is the way that it's supposed to be, because back into the conversation we were having, a lot of us are trying to get into the pockets of these corporations, but they don't know anything about us. And we think that a PowerPoint or a Facebook page or a video is going to make a case. And guess what? No. The physical, individual interaction with the client, with the person, with the kid, with the parent, with the family, it's going to make a difference. Because we don't know who is that person who's walking into that room, right? Maybe we do an educational program about scholarships. Maybe she received a bunch of scholarships going to college, and she knows the value of getting into those scholarships. Maybe if you're talking to me about an immigrant, you know, pipeline program, I will be in love with that. Like, oh, show me more, because of my personal story. So my recommendation when you're asking corporations for money, it's that we also have to think about the individual who's responsible to make the decision. It's not the executive director, I can tell you that. It's the board, it's the board members, and at the end of the day, it's the person who's managing, you know, those programs. That philanthropy money, right? The person who writes the check, it's that person who says to the board, I met with this foundation, I met with this organization, and I love what they're doing. And I'm really passionate about it, and I feel you should be feeling as passionate as me, so they told us to go and meet them at their program place. Right? So even though I do agree the marketing and position is really important, do not forget about that personal touch. Because nothing is going to change the interaction between two individuals. Not a Facebook page, not a Twitter account, not an Instagram, not a video. It's going to be how you feel about that program that you built or that you're representing, and how you could transfer that passion to someone else. And that's how we've been successful raising money in New York City specifically, is that, you know, we pay our students to go and share their stories. We pay them. We're not like other organizations, and I'm not putting a shame on anyone here, who take their own clients and go and show, oh, we need to raise money, come right here, speak. We pay our students to go and speak and share their stories because they should be getting something out of it. Right? There are clients that are being impacted by this program, they should be getting out of it. And when we go in, these individuals share their stories, believe me, it's more impactful than any other thing we could do. Because that's when the real passion, the real impact transfer and transcends to the person who's in the people who's in the room. So just have that in mind, because sometimes we forget in this rat race about the real implications of asking for money. When you have the opportunity to meet people like, like Susan, and you go and talk about all the things that you do, and then you go into this, maybe she's like already lost into it, like, oh, I want to learn about what you do. I want to go see the kids. I want to go see the families. And that's when you really connect with those funders. Before you, I think it's a, I'm sorry, I think it's a dating game, right? You invite them to dinner, you invite them to a coffee, you invite them to, and then the second date you're just like, hey, I like this, it's going places, let me tell you more about what we do, and then maybe you get a kiss on the third date.
And does anybody know how many charities are just in Broward?
8,500.
I don't know the answer, but it's thousands and thousands and thousands. I'm one person.
Exactly.
I would love very much to meet with all 20,000 charities. I have a 16-hour workday as it is, with all the responsibilities that I have with the Hard Rock. It is impossible for me to date. It's impossible. I don't have time to date in my personal life, let alone in my professional. So 3 dates for me with a charity it makes my head explode. I can't, as the organization that I'm representing, spend that kind of time. I agree with you 1,000% that it's a respect thing, that it is important to know about the organization, but you also have to know the people you're dealing with. And there are foundations that do that. Foundations have the time to do that. An organization like the Hard Rock, we're not built for philanthropy. That's not what we do. It's not what we do. It is a little tiny byproduct of our business. So know who you're dating before you try to spend that time where, the Robin Hood Foundation, they're foundations. They want to hear all this. They need to hear all that.
It's the difference when you're going out to get corporate sponsorships. You have to figure out like that message and that
exactly.
purpose and like what's in
Yep.
it for them.
What is a, yeah, and it's a double thing. Again, if you're trying to get foundation money, if you're trying to get corporate money, give me the bottom line. Give me the bottom line. I want to know how much money out of your 100% dollars go to the programs.
98%.
Well, and that brings me to my next question is like,
God bless you. That's a lot. And that's hard. And there are organizations that, like, again, in my head, because I worked with Dan Marino yesterday, 94 cents out of their $100. That is amazing. That there are so many charities that don't bring anywhere near that to the bottom line, because that's not always realistic. And you have to look at the overall big picture of what they do. And yes, a small organization who has a volunteer base could afford to do that. But most organizations, when you work even globally as well as locally, that's not translatable. So.
And my case, just to clarify there, I think that completely agree with you into the dates. The other thing that I wanted to add to this is, as Susan is mentioning, not just knowing who you're asking for money, but also I think it is really understanding how you could raise money quicker than just having all these meetings with 1 or 2 funders. And let me be clear, when you're small and you don't have access to a lot of this funding because they already have some organization that they give historically, and they like, I don't want to listen to this, I'm executing this. One of the statistics that I heard a couple of years in a philanthropy conference was that almost 70% of the funding in philanthropy comes from individuals. It's not coming from corporations, it's not coming from other foundations, it's for individual giving. And a lot of our non-for-profits, even foundations like ours, we tend to think, and board members tend to think, that, you know, oh no, John, let's go into Publix and let's get this $20,000 and with this we're gonna do this. Let's go into Target and give a $100,000 grant and we're gonna do this. And sometimes we don't develop within our developing office the idea of individual giving. Which if you look into, and I don't want to get into politics, but just bear with me, we're not going to talk about names, but if you look into the political races, how much money individual candidates are raising by $5, $20, and it's an individual cost.
That's right.
We're not talking about an educational access, platform. We're not talking about helping kids to get to whatever places you guys want them to get. So I do think that even though you don't have to have a date, you're not going to have access to have a date, you also have to think that you could have one campaign to raise this amount of dollars as a goal every year from individual givers. And a lot of non-for-profits don't do a great job on that because they, of course, tie to what happens if I lose this $25,000 grant and I don't have time to allocate my VP of development to go and do another campaign. But the risk should be taken in order to get more stabilized funding. When you have discretionary funding, which is when you get individual giving, you can now become innovative. Now you can really look into, we wanted to explore this. Oh, I'm not attached to these grant requirements because I know John gave me $100, Susan gave me $25, Dr. Salmon gave me $10. Now I have unrestricted funding. They just want to see this organization thrive. And they don't care how you spend your money. Of course, you'll be responsible because you're a 501c3, you have to go to the IRS. But now you have innovation in the room, and you can create more impact than when you had this restricted funding.
That's great. If you can each tell me from your perspective or tell us about what do you look at, what do you want to receive back? What kind of information? Like, how do you say, oh, that was successful, we should do that again? What do you want from the organizations as far as measurements for success?
I hit on some of them. I mean, definitely the
ROI.
Exactly. I mean, there has to be an ROI for us to get involved, and it's measured on two different scales. Number one, it's measured on, did we make an impact on this organization? That the company looks at it is, what did the ROI bring to the Hard Rock? I look at it as, what did the Hard Rock bring to the organization? So when I get a report back at the end of the event, I'm looking for both of those factors. I'm looking for, from the casino side, how many media impressions did we get? How many people were brought to our casino? We can't measure the dollars they spend, but we measure the exposure. So if we only got, 20 media impressions as opposed to 1 million media impressions, that would impact the next decision from the donation side of it. On the other side of it, and how I could fight when we're not getting what the casino has as an ROI, is I could fight on the other side of it that this organization brought 94 cents to the bottom line. These are measurable, quantifiable things. We hired 3 chefs that we donated the money to their program, but we physically hired these kids to come into our casino to give them a productive life. What was the impact on that side of it? So I need double facts when I'm looking for the second part of that. We try new things. I try to get us exposed to new organizations. The Hard Rock, of course, wants that quantifiable in advance, so it's a little bit hard when I'm starting with a new organization to bring the second part of it to it. But it's not unheard of. I mean, I have been able to get little organizations, and I don't know how many of you heard of Ann Stork? Okay, so that's this small little thing down the street from us that, they have a small board of directors. They don't have a large staff. But one of our tribal members had someone who was disabled that was part of that organization. They filtered their way in that way. And once I was exposed to it, once I went there and saw what they did, I was then able to get one of our tribal members involved and brought him. And not only do we give money, but now the tribe builds cheeky huts on their campus because they were having problems with the kids playing out in the sun. So, you know, it may not be dollars, but they're sending these guys over to build these cheekies, and so they're not paying for a tent anymore. They're, you know, we're donating cheekies. So it's, again, that creative funding. There may not be the check. You know, and we do write checks. So I'm not saying that we don't, but the creative ways that I've been able to find in that has made more of an impact, I believe, than the actual writing of the check. Yeah, hi?
I just want to add to what you were saying, ask a question to what you're saying. So, for example, you said you had a relationship established from one of the tribal members, and because of that relationship that was already there, you were able to go ahead and do something in kind for them, correct?
Correct.
So now, is that the same thing that if you needed to partner with an organization because the organization needed, say, for example, golf equipment, right? You guys do not necessarily do golf outings more than what you typically do, but you're knowing that this, beyond just the little kids PGA, you actually are helping individuals learn a STEM career that's going to give a lot more hits for your organization, right? Because you have to have a relationship there. Does the person's need to also be kids that are also not just in Broward, but a part of the tribe?
Yeah, the tribe has their own programs.
Right.
You know, so I try to stay away from what they do there. We keep it separate.
Yes.
One of the, and not every tribal member makes a lot of money, but I mean, it's public knowledge that, you know, they get dividends, and because of the success of the Hard Rock organization, they, if you're tribal, you do get money. And they had asked me to, they have these sort of inspirational speakers that will go to one of the tribal schools, or they'll create a program, and they asked me to get them a speaker. So I had done an event for Alonzo Mourning with the Miami Heat, and they asked if I could get him to come and talk to the kids. And it was a whole education process to get Alonzo to be able to understand that he can't go in there and talk about extreme poverty, because these kids are not poverty stricken any longer. Their ancestors were.
Right.
But this 14-year-old has, you know, millions of dollars in the bank accruing for them when they turn 18 or 21 or whatever it is. So how is somebody like Alonzo Mourning going to inspire them to be part of the workforce, to give that money back to the community? It was not his normal speech where he goes in and says, well, I was poor and I got help from this. They don't need the help, but they do need to understand how important it is when they do become of age to give back to the community, to become a valued member of the community and not just rest on their money. So Alonzo had to do a whole different mindset to go in and talk to them, and it was quite interesting on how he was able to get his message across.
So you don't have to necessarily be a part of the same organization, and if the organization is already doing the same similar activity, then you, of course, you would not do that, but you would cross-pollinate with something that's not being done, correct?
It's possible, yeah,
Right.
if it makes sense.
Right.
And it's an organization